Point City Council meeting to order. Please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, please sign in. Oh, that's right. Sorry. You want to take roll?
We'll take roll. Hardman.
Present.
Hudson. Trimble. McKinney. And Trevelyan is absent, so we have 4 members present.
Any changes to the agenda, Ryan?
There are 2 changes to the agenda, Your Honor. Item 5A was previously listed as second and third reading and final adoption, but we are actually just doing the second reading on that ordinance tonight. And item 7A, Browns Woods Hollow Plat 1. There's some language changes to that item, including the number of lots and including the acceptance of public improvements as part of that resolution.
I would move approval of the agenda as amended.
All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Revised agenda is approved. We had some challenges last meeting because folks were confused on how to unmute themselves so that they can speak during new business items or public hearings. So we just want to remind you to press *6 in order to unmute yourself. That was one of the issues that we had with the item that's 5A. So I'll reopen the public hearing on 5A because Councilmember Hudson said there was a couple of people along 76th Street that tried to unmute themselves to speak last time. So no need for any of those residents to speak during citizens forum, which is item number 2. So now would be the time for anyone that wants to address the city council on any item that's not either part of old business tonight, public hearings, or new business. If you'll come to the podium and share your name and address, we'd appreciate it.
Hello there, my name is Julia McGuire. Address is 919 45th Street. I'm here today because I just wanted to say thank you to staff and council for supporting a high quality of life. I definitely feel a lot of satisfaction knowing that I've had some influence on that quality, and my reimbursement for a residential rain barrel is on the bill list tonight. So I'm going to say thank you in advance for approving that. I'm not going to stick around to make sure you do it. I'm just going to trust you all. I also really want to encourage council and staff, hopefully over time, to expand the rain barrel and soil quality restoration reimbursement program. I'd really like to see it include education about a wider variety of best management practices and maybe more flexible reimbursements as a way to solve a homeowner's stormwater issues. I'm just thinking back, so I've lived here since '99. In 2017, I figured out a way to install a rain garden as a way to get rid of basement water during rain events. I was able to use Polk County's cost share program. So in addition to keeping my basement dry for the last 3 years, I also have less lawn to mow. I don't do soil quality restoration. I just buy earthworm hatch, so it's eggs, and I lay that over the ground. And they're African, so they hatch in the summer and then they die in the winter. So they aerate. It's way cheaper. But I think about my own property. Our city covers 3 other counties. I know that there are homes outside of Polk County that surely have issues that are unique to their lots. And, I'm also thinking about my father-in-law, my former father-in-law, remembering, his struggle is to maintain stream bank and creek on his property. He loved his property very much. So I would really ask that council and staff strongly consider the other practices like stream bank stabilization or erosion control, erosion prevention measures, maybe permeable pavement systems. They might be more appropriate for different properties. And I totally get that, knowledge bases and capacity to inspect and educate for each practice will vary. I totally get that, but I just keep thinking about how much land we have in residential zoning, and it's 4 counties. I feel like it would be really smart for the city to incentivize citizens who are homeowners to be more responsible in protecting their own residential property and showing care for their neighbors and for the public infrastructure. I was just thinking, so I'm getting reimbursed for 1 rain barrel. The impact of a single 55-gallon rain barrel for a small residential roof is going to be really limited. in the impact it has for most rain events. Kind of the same thing. Soil quality restoration is great, but say you have really steep topography, you're going to have pretty limited impact. And I can think of a lot of lots right now where it would be kind of limited. So I think we need to maybe be more flexible about the practices that are considered for reimbursement. You're certainly welcome to come tour my property if you want. But again, I want to say thank you in advance. And I appreciate being able to come forth and talk to you all.
Thanks, Julie. I know that we're going to update the comprehensive plan, and a big initiative of that is stormwater management and protecting the existing facilities that we have. So I know that's front and center on our list to actually tackle, which should be a better way to help manage it. And we're also looking for regional solutions, which we think is a better way to manage stormwater. So that's at the top of our list. But since you're here, I also want to note that I think one of the first projects you and I worked on together was the community gardens, which we started out with 6 or 8, and Sally and I have one down there now. And if you look, there's a lot of them down there, and there's so many people that really enjoy that. So I think you were the first one to reach out to me to suggest we have community gardens, especially for people who lived in apartments who really couldn't garden, and that's become wildly successful down there. So we thank you for that idea as well.
Yep, definitely feel a lot of satisfaction because I remember we had a water tower. It got filled once a week. We'd run out of water and there were only 8 plots. So it was great. It was great.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else for Citizens Forum?
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and the City Council. My name is Steve Purcell. Actually, I have commercial property at 3737 West Tom Parkway. And one of the items that I would like to have some conversations about is item 4K and the pass of a resolution on July 6th. So I don't know for sure if you want to have that conversation now or if you'd rather have that when it comes up at that line item.
It's part of the consent agenda, so unless somebody pulls it, that item's not specifically going to come up.
Okay.
So why don't you share your
Can I
concerns
request
with
to
us
have it
tonight?
pulled? Well, the main concern that I have is when you look at the document that was signed and approved, the math doesn't work out. Let me take my mask off. So the agreement was to basically spend $42.8 million. And it says that Google is going to pay up to $20 million a year. Their maximum is $2.25 per household. So if you go to 42,000 households, the max would actually be $1,100,000 per year. So the resolution, I believe, was mistaken when it was passed because there's no way that you can get to a $20 million a year investment by Google when in fact you can get to $20 million over the 20-year period, the life of the contract. So that's a concern that I think needs to be brought up and discussed before anything else moves forward with it.
Okay. Well, we'll have a response for you here. So I want to see if anybody else is here for. Did you have any other concerns?
Nope, that was it.
All right, thanks.
All right, thank you very much.
Anyone else for Citizens Forum? Okay, seeing no one, I'll close the Citizens Forum, but I know that we've got, I don't know, Tom or Jamie, if you want to address Mr. Purcell's issue there, if you want Tim or who wants to address it, because I think it also involves apartments. So
it should be $1 million a year, Your Honor, rather than $20 million a year. $20 million over the life of the 20 of the agreement.
Dick, do you have a microphone? Start over.
I was going to say, to your point, sir, I think it should read $1 million, up to $1 million a year, $20 million over the life of the agreement. You were pointing out it said $20 million a year.
Yes, on the agreement, it says $20 million a year. So I just want to make sure that everybody understood when they voted on it, that's a pretty dramatic difference. $20 million a year on a $42 million investment is a pretty easy decision. $20 million out of $42 million over 20 years to a company the size of Google is a pretty good giveaway, I think. So I just want to make sure everybody was aware. That's a pretty big discrepancy that was voted on.
And maybe Jamie can add more, but it's just a misstatement on there. It should be $1 million a year, up to $20 million.
Jamie Lettering, Deputy City Manager. I'm not sure that it's a misstatement, actually. The price per household is based on the number of servable addresses. We won't really know the number of servable addresses until the entire project is built out and complete. But obviously, this council was aware that the cost of the full build out is estimated at around $40 to $42 million. And the agreement with Google can generate revenue up to somewhere in the neighborhood of around $20 million. If, a lot of things go perfectly well. That also means that every household that is a servable address in West Des Moines would allow their permission for the city to hook them up to that conduit network, which is how the city is paid by Google Fiber. So there is a discrepancy, if you would like to call it that, of around $20 million where additional revenue can be generated from other parties within the system. But it was a long-term conversation that we all had to say that that is also an investment in infrastructure that this council wanted to make for the quality of life in offering provider choice fiber to the home. And as other providers join into the system and additional revenue is generated, that will help to cover that leftover cost. So I wouldn't dare categorize it as a giveaway by any means.
And I don't want people to think that we did it because of Google Fiber. We were doing this with or without Google Fiber. They happened to call us at the tail end of our project. We were moving forward with or without them because there's other people that want to rent this infrastructure, and we had areas of community that didn't have this available to them. So this was not driven by Google Fiber. We were well on our way to do that. They just happened to call and say, hey, we love your idea and we'd like to contribute towards it. So that wasn't the driving factor for doing what we're doing.
But it's still, there's no way to get to $20 million a year. You have that close to 700,000 homes passed.
We were looking at making an investment over time of 42 million ourselves. And Google happened to come in and partner with us, and we're hoping that other providers partner with us as well. And as Ms. Letzring said, at that point in time, it will potentially have other people be paying for that amount, but the city was willing to put that forward, and we were doing that little by little as we went. And then Google came forward and said they want to be a willing partner. They're willing to pay this amount. And so the way I'm looking at it is that we had $42 million investment, that 20 million of it over the life of the project is going to be taken care of by Google. And I would anticipate that in the future, there'll be more providers that will also lease the system from the city. In addition to what the mayor said, there's parts of the city where I dealt with this. There was a guy that wanted a bike trail moved a little further from his house. We couldn't move the bike trail any further from his house because there wasn't enough room in the right of way. So we've got a lot of areas in the city where there's right-of-way that's jam-packed and there's nowhere to go. So this is going to help us with that and better managing our right-of-way as well. So
just point of order, there is absolutely a way to get to $20 million, and it's per servable address fee paid by Google Fiber per month, per year, based on the number of servable addresses that we have in our community estimated. So there within that agreement, there's not a mathematical equation to get to $42 million, but everyone was well aware of that.
The serviceable address is a apartment.
Correct.
So if you look at a 500 unit apartment project, that's 500 servable addresses. It's not single family homes.
Correct.
If I'm correct though, it does say in the document that it's 42,000 addresses is the cap in the document. You take that times the 225 per address, if they got every single customer.
Per month, per address, per year.
Yes, and when you total that up, you come to 1,134,000.
An annual payment.
But I think-
Times 20 years.
$20 million annually.
Well, I
Yep.
think that's the
It's
difference.
not-
This gentleman is saying 20 million a year.
Oh, I'm sorry, it's,
He said it's 20 million a year.
Oh.
That's what it says.
okay, I'm sorry, no, the agreement is 1.1 or whatever that number was annually for the life of the bonds, or 20 years. So generating
It's
$20 million.
incorrect to say that Google will pay us $20 million.
yeah, we were under that understanding when we voted. I'm sorry, I missed it at the beginning. Can I ask who you represent, or you just represent yourself as a citizen? Okay.
Okay.
And have the property at 3737 West Palm Parkway. And I've got a signed agreement with the same conduit. But the concern is that this wasn't a deal that anybody else, I believe, received as an offering to join the conduit.
The exciting news, Mr. Purcell, is that a way that agreement has been drafted, it's not a development agreement, it's a license agreement, very similar to the license agreement that MediaCom has with us in our shared conduit duct banks along Mill Civic. And we'd be very excited about partnering with your organization to also offer fiber to the home in a competitive marketplace for West Des Moines residents.
At the 225 per address.
At a per linear foot rate that is very similar to the 225 per address.
Our per linear rate was, for 1 1/4 was $3, for 4-inch was $9 a foot.
We're very confident we can either meet or offer competitive rates, possibly at or below those rates that you've been offered in the past.
I just want to make sure everybody was aware that what we're seeing in the document is not capable of happening. So that was.
Well, I respectfully disagree, but.
Change the language.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 3 are mayor, city council, city manager reports. Matt, we'll start with you.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, just a couple items here. First off, we had a development and planning subcommittee this morning, and of interest there is that the Board of Adjustment, the powers that the Board of Adjustment has, that's something that legal and staff help us better appreciate. And in fact, they're looking at a new tool, if you will, as it relates to special exceptions in addition to variances. It's something we have not really exercised here in the city. So we had a good conversation on that. My understanding is that will be coming to our council, full council, maybe probably next month sometime. So that'll be maybe something new that the Board of Adjustments will have. In addition, last time we all got together a couple weeks ago, we heard from folks about backyard chickens and other animals. That's something that we have had conversations on through the development and planning subcommittee throughout 2020. It came up again this morning. We're going to, I know there's going to be some additional outreach to the community, but we do anticipate that that's something that would likely come before the council later this year sometime. And then I'll just say the MAC meeting was held, I think it was last week. Quick couple updates there. Probably no surprise, but because of coronavirus, there's been a surge in the number of calls to 211 for mental health related matters in our community. And so that's something that, the MAC group, and I know cities at large are very concerned about kind of the impact on mental health, as well as another large topic was police reforms. And I know that we all know, I think, that the city of Des Moines codified many of the practices that they have. They mentioned that they didn't make everybody happy through that process. I think it was Mayor County had indicated that the NAACP had signaled support for their original and the past version in the city of Des Moines. I know that's something that, as a result of the pledge you signed, that we're continuing to explore in our community. Look forward to that conversation. Yep. Last thing I'd just say is on the consent agenda, we do have item 4U, and I want to thank Brian Hemisath. 4U relates to the Grand Avenue reconstruction, and we had a couple constituents reach out about something that was in relation to the Grand Avenue reconstruction. I appreciate that getting resolved, I think, in a way that works for everybody. So.
Right. Yeah, no, that's been 10+ years in the making.
Yep. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Russ.
The Parks and Rec Advisory Board met, I believe, last Thursday. And I'm going to go over some of the items that they covered. There's going to be a revision to city code coming up in the near future dealing with park regulations. One of those things will be clarifying the difference between city park and Parks and Rec facilities that may or may not be within a park. We're also going to be prohibiting, it's prohibited right now, but we're enforcing this to the greater extent, prohibiting overnight parking in city parks and Parks and Rec facility parking lots unless authorized. We're adding Raccoon River Park hours in code. And we're revising consumption of alcohol sections to allow for each Parks and Rec facility to develop its own alcohol policy and changing alcohol allowed in city parks from beer only to any alcoholic beverage containing less than 15% alcohol by volume, and in an individual cannot exceed 16 ounces. And that will go to public safety on August 7th. Skipping down, the Raccoon River Park Boathouse is opening this week And there's an opening celebration, as you all know, Friday, July 24th, starting at 5 with a short program at 5:30. It's going to be a small opening due to social distancing and COVID-19, but it will be a mighty opening nonetheless. The Jamie Hurd Amphitheater scheduled completion is 1st of September. And the Legion Park Skate Facility, which I know a lot of people are very excited about, construction is going to be beginning in the next 2 weeks. Let's skip down to a little. Raccoon River Park is going to be getting upgrade of existing lights to LED lights. And that's going to be out to bid. And then as far as recreation goes, 176 registered swim lesson participants had swim lessons in the final 2 weeks. Session started today. The Flatland Triathlon was held on July 12th at Raccoon River Park, and there were 242 participants. Holiday Park and Raccoon River Park have been hosting youth baseball and softball tournaments. I've gotten both compliments and complaints in regards to this. We're doing what we can to make sure that social distancing is occurring and people are taking precautions so as to not spread the disease. The USSSA has hired security officers to help enforce social distancing, and they have staggered start times. They've got a decreased number of fields being used, and they're implementing tent canopy separation distance and capacity restrictions as well. The fall program guide will be mailed out within the next 2 weeks, and registration for residents will open on August 11th. So that's an update from Parks and Rec. The only other update that I would is that I am on the recovery committee for Polk County, and we continue to talk about the number of COVID-19 cases that we're experiencing here in the metro. We've had conversations about what other communities are doing, and have had conversations about getting together and sharing what we can as far as best practices go to try to continue to maintain the social distancing, not mandate, but encourage wearing of masks, and potentially having a joint press conference between cities if we can get together and come up with what we consider best practices and move that forward. So I know there's a lot of heated debate on this issue and what works and what doesn't work and what people would like to see their government do and what they would not like to see their government do. I think that we as leaders need to do what we can to encourage best practices and encourage people to wear masks and socially distance and do what we can to try to stop the spread of this disease. Some people are going to listen to that, and I hope many do, and some may not. And that's just the fact of everyday life and what we're dealing with on multiple issues. Unless there's a mandate in place, you can't make people do something they don't want to do. You can just ask for their help. And I think that's what we're looking at trying to do. So,
Okay.
That's it for me.
Greg?
Yeah, a couple of things. First off, we are still in the midst of the U.S. Census for 2020, and I did want to encourage all the residents of West Des Moines to please fill that out because upwards of millions of dollars could be flowing our way from the federal government. So I just wanted to take this moment to encourage the residents of West Des Moines to fill out their census online, and that will also lessen the number of people that have to go door to door during this COVID crisis as well. So that is still underway. I just wanted to give a couple of compliments as well to city staff in the realm of public works and public safety, because over the last couple of weeks, a couple of residents have reached out about the city pond. The city pond wasn't looking too hot a couple of weeks ago, and as part of the consent agenda, we were approving a dredging, and so the city pond's going to be looking a lot better. So I wanted to definitely thank Public Works for making the pond look better, and it will continue to look better. And I also wanted to take a moment to thank those in public safety, because it was 2 weeks ago, and a resident reached out, a teacher in the community reached out and was wondering, right outside the window, you can see there's the Chapel Ridge apartments that lead right over to the library, but Mills Civic is right in the way. And so the teacher was concerned that a lot of her students who live in Chapel Ridge have to cross 4 lanes of Mills Civic to get from Chapel Ridge over to the library. And so I reached out to some folks at the city, and they informed me that, oh yes, we're already getting ready to install a hawk beacon there. And sure enough, that's a part of the hawk beacon being the traffic signal that turns red for the cars so that the children can walk across, and adults. But I was just really, really impressed that this plan was already underway before a resident reached out saying, hey, we should put a stoplight there so that students can get across. And then I was so pleased to find out, oh yeah, city staff's already working on that. So that was really, really pleasing to hear. So I did want to give compliments to Public Safety and Public Works and Engineering as well, who had kind of been setting this up. Also pleased to hear that the hawk beacon on 39th Street crossing EP True should get started soon. I think it's September maybe. And even though the school year will have already started, that's really, really good to see that students will have an opportunity to get across another 4-lane road safety. So compliments to those who are focused on public safety. And that's the end.
Renee?
Thank you, Your Honor, and good afternoon, everyone. I won't repeat the topics that were covered by Councilman McKinney because we were both at that meeting this morning. So thank you for covering that so nicely. I would like to say that I have been appointed to a sub-governmental committee called the Polk County Disaster Recovery Partnership, which consists of elected officials from other municipalities to really talk about coordinated efforts. I think we all learned a lot from COVID and was thrust into COVID. And it's best that we sit back and understand the impact that COVID has had on a lot of communities and what kinds of resources we can collaborate on and how we can be better if there's a second round of this. So pleased to represent West Des Moines on that particular subcommittee. We've had 2 meetings and we're getting ready to go full throttle on a number of efforts that will make things better the second go round. I would like to also thank a group of West Des Moines employees for some work that they have done over the months on an issue that I've been dealing with a neighborhood in a circle on Ashmore Drive that is having lots of issues with the neighbor that lives in that circle and the conditions by which they are experiencing from the result of this individual. But Captain Barrett has been out there so many times I can't count. I really appreciate the work of Jessica with the legal department that has lended her voice and expertise in dealing with this situation. Joe Corey from Public Works has been extremely helpful. So again, I've been out there several times. I'm not quite sure we're got everything fully resolved, but I sure appreciate what the city staff are trying to do to try to make this situation better. It's difficult. There's a lot of complexities. I'm in the middle of it. I've been out there several times and we'll go out there anytime I need to, but really appreciate the staff lending their expertise there. Have a library trustee meeting tomorrow. Looking forward to that and seeing how things are going there as they have opened up the library on a small scale for folks to visit that. And then I want to comment on the issue of masks. I have probably received 8 letters and maybe several phone calls across the board on the issue of masks. And so as an elected official, I just want folks to know, so I'm not hiding anything, I'm going to wear a mask. In my seat as I sit, I cannot mandate it, but I care about you and your health, and I hope that you care about me and my health. So I will wear a mask, and whenever anyone asks me, is a mask important given our COVID situation, my answer to that is yes. So I just want people to know where I stand. I cannot mandate it. We can certainly offer guidelines here within the city if we need to with regard to keeping employees safe, but I stand and wear a mask when I go in public or if I am within 6 feet of you. I don't want you to catch anything I have or me put anything out in the atmosphere that might be harmful to you. So that's where I stand. Again, I'm getting lots of letters and I'm getting calls, and I thought that I'd share in public domain for people to hear front and center where I stand on the issue of masks. It is not a political statement. I don't make it a political statement. It is a public health issue, and that's how I view it, and that's how I see it. I can only speak my truth and be authentic to where I stand on this. It's a public health issue. And so I wanted to get on the record, as I've shared with other constituents that have called, where I stand on the issue of masks. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Tom, any city manager report?
No report, Your Honor.
Okay, item 4 is the consent agenda. Are there any items that any council member wants to pull?
I'd like a clarification just in addition to the minutes, so 4A.
Okay,
Okay, I would just move the remainder then.
I'd like to pull 4K.
Okay.
okay. Because you're going to abstain.
Correct.
Okay, so
Okay.
with that, with 4K and 4A, you said, Renee?
Yep.
Being pulled?
Just need a, yeah.
I would move the remainder of the consent agenda.
I second.
All right, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Abstentions, those items pass.
Well, I'm sorry, I will abstain.
No, he
We haven't gotten to that
come
yet.
back to it.
I'm sorry. Okay.
Okay, so the first item pulled was 4A. And Renee, you want to make some clarifications to the
Yeah.
July 6 minutes?
Sure. I'd just like the record to reflect when the West Des Moines Human Rights Commission spoke, I did acknowledge their hard work, but I do want it noted that I am the liaison to the West Des Moines Human Rights Commission when they indicated who was present. I'd just like that for the record to reflect City Council Hardman is the liaison to the West Des Moines Human Rights Commission.
Okay, so
I
Ryan,
spent a lot of hours on with that commission. Just want to reflect it.
yep, you want to move approval of the minutes with that add?
I move approval with that addition.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, and Matt needs to abstain on item 4K, so someone. wanna
I'd move
it?
approval of item 4K.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? And
And
an
I'll
abstention.
abstain for
All right.
potential conflict. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 5, old business. We have one item tonight. As I mentioned, I'll reopen the public hearing because Councilman Hudson indicated he had a couple constituents who tried to unmute themselves to speak at the public hearing last time and they couldn't get through. So item 5A is the village on Jordan Creek, southwest corner of Jordan Creek Parkway and Ashworth Road, established the village on Jordan Creek Plan Unit Development. Checkmate LLC. This is continued from July 6, 2020 agenda. It's an ordinance for the second reading tonight. So with that, I will reopen it for public comment. Let me first start. Is there anyone physically present in the council chambers that wants to address the council on item 5A? Okay, if you'll come forward and give us your name and address. And then for those of you listening on the phone, I'll ask for public comment from those listening on the phone after we get done with the folks that are actually here.
Certainly. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the time. My name is Sean Leisinger. I live at 7755 Aspen Drive, just in the southwest kind of corner of where the development's being proposed. And myself, as well as the neighborhood, has met several times over the last probably couple of months, really ever since we had a Friday afternoon, call it or ad hoc meeting at Hope Church, 4:30 afternoon. The civil engineer there pitched the proposal at that point to the neighborhood at that point in time. Since then, we've been continuing the dialogue, and we had our issues last time around, but I think really there's a few things that really kind of stand out for us for additional consideration within our neighborhood. Number one, really from our perspective, we're not living in a vacuum. Clearly, the folks that are living in that section, we love our open land. We get it. However, that progress is going to happen. Development is going to happen from time to time, especially with this quadrant. We understand that fully and don't have any issues necessarily at least with regard to the senior housing that's being proposed in that southwest quadrant. Our issue is the access. 76th Street pushing up from the south, from Aspen Drive. We've been in here several times as Ashworth Road is being expanded the last few years. Just the traffic concerns in the neighborhood are ridiculous. And I know we've continued to, really kind of communicate that issue throughout. And we've also learned that there were some boxes put at a couple different intersections following the last conversation that we had at City Council. We understand that there's been some pretty significant speeders, and we're trying to come to an opportunity here for us to make our neighborhood safer. Number one, there's tons of kids. We don't need people flying up and down at 25 going 55. That's been the result. And so really one of our bigger concerns there. Some of the other concerns that we have are just as it relates to opening up 76 all the way through, just dumps that much more traffic onto Aspen. And that's just the nature of the beast. And so, we're really looking and seeking council's ability and the ability to think outside the box as to how we can frame this so that development happens, but we're creative and we understand that there's a different way to do it than just punching through 76th Street. There could be a way where we punch it from Ashworth and do an arc road over through 70, or, the southeast sort of exit there onto Jordan Creek Parkway. So again, these are ideas that us as the neighborhood has come together, adding some stop signs up and down Aspen in a few places. Also, I think, there's plenty of opportunities here where we can make the neighborhood safer, still allow the development to happen, but do so in such a way that, from a neighborhood perspective, I think for us, at least speaking for me, there's the ability for us to completely self-contain that entire development. Not have anything pushed through, just work this arc road so we have the ability to, again, provide the multiple accesses that we need, but do it in such a way that our neighborhood is not affected. So with that.
Great, thank you.
Mhm.
Anyone else present in the council chambers that wants to address the council on item 5A? Okay, seeing no one else, is there anyone on the phone that wants to address the council on item 5A? If so, I'll remind you to *6 so that you can unmute yourself. Okay, hearing no one else, we will close the reopened public hearing. And we have and actually this is the second reading, so we'll have 2 weeks before the actual third reading takes place. So I know, Tom, if there's additional traffic control issues that Sean or anyone else in the neighborhood has raised that we haven't studied, I guess we'd like you to take a look at those over the next couple of weeks to see. If we've looked at all of them and it's been vetted, that's fine too. But if they've raised some other items that you want to consider before the third reading, that we have time to do that.
Mayor, if I can, first of all, Sean, thank you for being here. I appreciate the concern about safety, having a young family, and understanding, traffic flows. One of the things is I just pulled up a map in the area. I'd be curious, Tom, or whoever would be appropriate, is, and just to the west there, 78th Street does connect from Aspen to Ashworth. So maybe say 2 blocks to the west there. Just curious if there are problems along maybe 78th Street that we're seeing that we would anticipate seeing on 76, or will this perhaps alleviate things overall in the general area? So just knowing that punches through.
Brian can come up with one, but the more chances you have to move through a community or through a neighborhood reduces actually the impact on other areas and helps in general. So I hope follow up on that.
Yeah, Brian Hemeseth, city engineer. Any chances that we have to get additional connections to Ashworth Road? It's going to help traffic overall in the area. One of the big things is people coming to that senior living facility. If they were to come in at 76 from the south and 76 did not go through, they would have to go up Jordan Creek Parkway to one of our major intersections that's very congested already, make a left turn, then go to another intersection that in the future will be congested and make another left turn to get to it. That's just one of the many reasons why 76 really needs to go through. The other, there's folks that live on 78th Place between Aspen and Ashworth. This will help alleviate some traffic for them because there'll be people in the neighborhood to the south between around 76th and Jordan Creek Parkway that will use 76 to get to Ashworth so they don't have to go on to Jordan Creek Parkway to get there. So there's going to be an alleviation of traffic from the folks on 78th Place as well. So I can go through all of these unless there's very specific questions that you'd like me to answer.
Other questions from the council?
No, that's helpful. I appreciate it, Brian. I just noticed that a couple blocks to the west, there's one that went all the way through, and I just
we haven't done any speed studies on that particular section, but I would just want to throw out there that just so it's clear, there were a couple of speeders on that when we had those boxes up checking the speeds. But for the most part, the average speed east of the S curve was 23 miles an hour. The posted speed's 25. The 85th percentile speed is 26. So that means 85% of the cars were traveling 26 miles an hour or less. And then the same with west of the S curve. The average speed was 25 and the 85th percentile was 29. And the maximum speed was 52. And there was another one on the other side was 45. So we've got it pinpointed to a pretty specific time of day. So if we sent out the police to check at specific time of day, we could probably catch a couple of those people.
Well, and we have that challenge all over the city.
True.
Oh, yeah.
So I know that we try to address those as they come up, but I know I've worked on several of them over the years with the same concerns.
Right.
When I first got
go ahead.
elected, we bought, four signs that we didn't have. I think we had maybe 2 signs and we bought 4 or something to that effect. And now we've got, Jim Dickinson's got a number of streets that these signs rotate between that are kind of known problems for speeders. And the most aggravating thing is that the people that are doing the speeding live in these neighborhoods. So that's frustrating, but, and maybe in sometimes they're cutting through. I don't know. But my question to you is, were the speed signs, were they turned on, if you will, or were they dark when we were monitoring?
These are different. They're like a side fire type of and people wouldn't even know that they were there.
Okay,
so
so people didn't know, because the ones that I have on 50th Street, it's almost like police lights go on as you go, and I've noticed people hit the brakes and thinking there might be a camera on there or something, but.
This is about as true of a
okay.
True
of a picture as you can possibly get there.
Yeah, it's because people don't know it's there.
So a couple things to share. So first off, thank you, Sean, for speaking here. I've spoken with the residents of 76 and Aspen several times over the last couple of weeks. Had some really nice meetings right at that dead end there, and there's trees. It's shaded. It's a pretty nice evening meeting. And I did want to really speak on behalf of those residents. I know Sean was as well. But so the development in this rectangle, it's a great idea. I know the city's been looking forward to it for a long time. I know residents along Ashworth, along the south side, they are long suffering because of the massive growth in size and traffic along Ashworth. It's gone from a 2-lane rural road up to this 4-lane, and what is that intersection up to 26 lanes at that intersection of Ashworth and Jordan Creek now or something. And so those folks on the south side of Ashworth, it'd be nice to have some closure for this folks. So the development is a great idea. My primary concern just revolves around 3 things for this particular plan that we're looking at. One, as Sean was kind of mentioning, the traffic that will increase if this goes through, and hopefully finding mitigation if it does. Number 2, and I feel very strongly about this, that ensuring that traffic, that construction traffic never goes through, because if this development's going to go through, there will be dump trucks, there will be concrete mixer trucks, there will be every truck that my 3-year-old loves going through to find their way into this development. But keeping the street, we just put a dead end sign this week so that everyone can know that it's dead end, but keeping that street dead ended until there is a completed connection to Ashworth and preferably Jordan Creek as well. That's incredibly important, because there's going to be, for the senior center, there's going to be a lot of construction there for future offices. And I don't know when those will be actually created, but ultimately to ensure that 76th Street goes through from the north first, and that if it's ever open from the south, it will make sure that it goes, if it's ever open from the south, that the northern connection to Ashworth is there. And finally, number 3, and making sure that the PUD has buffers written into it, whether it be a berm with a fence on top, keeping as many trees as possible on the west side of 76th Street, and on the east side of 70th Street. On the east side of 76th Street, I believe that there are no sewer or pipe or stormwater drain or pipe issues, that is. But on the west side, I was wondering if maybe Lynn or Brian could speak to maybe some of the concerns on the west side, because on the southwest corner of the rectangle, I know that there's, I'm going to get the words wrong, but a sewer or a stormwater, basically pipes there's on the southwest side of this development. And I don't know how much that will affect the number of trees that currently serve as a buffer between the new development and the residents who are on the north side of Aspen. And whether or not there's an answer to that question right now, I'm not sure. Lynn, I'd asked you a couple of days ago if the developer was aware, or Brian, maybe I'd asked you, I can't remember. But on the southwest corner, are we anywhere for the number of trees that can remain? Or is that a little too specific at this moment?
Lynn Tweed, Director of Development Services. Jason Leeden's here, who is on the engineering consultant on behalf of the senior project. We did raise it to ask them to take a look at it. So I'd ask Jason to come up and kind of fill you in on what they found.
Awesome. Thank you.
Good evening. Jason Ledden with Snyder and Associates, 2727 Southwest Snyder Boulevard in Ankeny, here on behalf of the developer of the senior living piece, specifically that southwest corner. With the berming requirements on that southwest corner, we're really only able to save about a 10-foot strip of plant material along that property line. Now, there is existing trees on those existing properties there as well. There's about a row of trees on all those properties, and there's also about another row of trees that we'll be able to save within that 10-foot buffer. And then we'll be building a berm up, and that will all be buffered per the PUD requirements. We're gonna have a pretty significant buffer in there as well. We're also open to putting a fence on top of that buffer to add another 6-foot height to that as well. Right now, we're looking at about a 6 to 7 foot tall height berm with another 6-foot fence on top of that. So we'd be about 12 feet up in the air to kind of recreate that tree buffer along in there.
All right, thank you.
Just to specifically touch on like the sewer, the sanitary sewer, we aren't anticipating connecting into that sewer. Sewer will be extended up 76th Street right away. We'll hook into the sewer there. Now for the storm sewer, there will be about a 20-foot wide swath through there to get to that storm sewer. That's where all that stormwater comes from Ashworth, from the west side of 76th, and from this subject property through there. Looking at it, there is a dead or half dead ash tree in there right now, so it probably needs to be taken out.
And for the within the development itself, I guess I was looking at the site plan and the parking lot. I was wondering if there was anything we could do, because right now the parking lot of the senior center, it kind of spits out on the very, very southern side of the development. Is there any way to spit it out on the northern side of that particular development? Because then it would more encourage people to go north.
So with the width of the building, it would really require the street widths get kind of tough. It'd almost end up right on top of 76. So you'd almost act as a frontage road there. And we kind of want connectivity all the way through the site, both for the residents and for fire and all that.
Well, and we'll get a detailed look at the site plan when it actually gets submitted. We're just dealing with the zoning tonight.
Sure, absolutely.
And there's kind of a thinner plant material, probably kind of where you roughly met the residents right there at 76. All that area in there that's a little less thinned out is to remain.
Okay.
So that's the house that actually fronts east off of 76th. All that plant material along that house will remain, just because there's a little bit more room there to provide a buffer.
Thank you so much. I had one more question about, and it won't be for you. It'll either be for Brian or Lynn. I was talking to Tom a little bit earlier, and right now, the way the plan is written, it says that 76th Street will actually not be completed on the northern side. So I was wondering if we could get written into the official plan that the dead end would not be, the dead end on the south side will not be removed until the completion of the entire street. And because right now, the way it is written in the pinky is not, that's not the way it's written right now. I don't know if you can address that a little bit.
Lynn Tweet, Director of Development Services again. Certainly if that's the council's direction that you want language added to the PUD that requires 76th Street to be constructed all the way from north to south, Ashworth, all the way to Aspen before we take away that current dead end, we can certainly add that language into it and bring it back at the third reading for your approval.
Sure, I would appreciate if that language could be added.
Okay.
And it doesn't make any sense to open that up unless you can get all the way to Ashworth, right? So I can't imagine the developer would have concerns about that.
Yeah, again, it'd be for the construction would be a quick way for them to come in, especially if they're coming from the west, but there's really no reason for it. They can make their way around Jordan Creek Parkway and come in that way.
So yeah, if we can make that change, that would be great.
Will someone want to move the second reading with that change?
Move consideration of the second reading with the change that Councilman Hudson just put forward, that it stays dead-ended until
There's a connection to
there's
Ashworth to
connection
the
to
north.
Ashworth.
Second.
All right, any other questions or comments on the second reading?
Just so you know, I will be voting no because the residents in the area in Ward 2 do not wish this street to go through, so I will be voting no tonight.
So all those in favor, well, we've got the second reading moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed?
No.
Okay, and any abstentions? All right, Ryan.
3 yes, 1 no. An ordinance amending the official zoning map in the city code of the city of West Des Moines, Iowa, 2019 by amending Title IX zoning, Chapter 9, Plan Unit Development District pertaining to PUD district regulations and guidelines.
Move approval of the second reading.
Second.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Nay.
Any abstentions? All right, second reading's approved.
I would ask before we move on, though, and I think Councilman McKinney asked this, and maybe we didn't go over everything, but obviously staff's going to take a look if there's any other way to punch the road through and not have it connect all the way through. If it could come here and do like a little jaunt over to Jordan Creek Parkway or something, my guess would be that it's not safe to do that, but if you could look at it, if there's a way to do it, we'd like to see that. It is what it is.
I'd appreciate that. Thank you, Russ.
Okay, item 6, public hearings. We have a number of them tonight. Item 6A, this is the time and place for a public hearing to consider the Wilder Pines 1000 and 1100 South 60th Street, approve a comprehensive plan land use map amendment, and establish a plan unit development for single-family residential development initiated by the Pines LLC. This was continued from the July 6, 2020 City Council agenda. Ryan, would you please read the date the notice was published?
June 16th, 2020 in the Des Moines Register.
Have we received any written comments?
The Plan and Zoning Commission, by a vote of 7 yes, adopted a resolution recommending approval of the comp plan amendment and PUD ordinance.
All right, now would be the time for anyone in the audience who would like to address the council on item 6A. I'm going to first ask if there's anybody physically present in the council chambers that wants to address the council on 6A. All right, seeing no one, I'll ask if there's anybody on the phone that would like to address the council on item 6A. All right, hearing no one, I'll declare the public hearing closed. We have a resolution and ordinance which we have to take separately. The council communication indicates there's no outstanding issues, so we need a resolution to approve the comp plan amendment.
Move approval of the resolution.
Second.
Questions or comments on the comp plan amendment? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Comp plan amendment is approved. Second item is the ordinance for the first reading.
Move consideration of the first reading.
Second.
Questions or comments on the ordinance? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, Ryan.
4 yes, an ordinance amending the official zoning map in the city code of the city of West Des Moines, Iowa, 2019 by amending Title IX zoning, Chapter 9, Plan Unit Development District pertaining to PUD district regulations and guidelines.
Move approval of the first reading.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, first reading is approved. Item 6B, the council's being asked to continue this to the August 3rd, 2020 council agenda.
Move continuation.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Any abstentions? All right, that's continued. Item 6C, this is the time and place for a public hearing to consider Talon's Reach, northwest and southwest corner of Stagecoach Drive and 88th Street. Amend the plan unit development to change residential setback standards for parcel G, initiated by Mill Ridge Homes LLC. Ryan, would you please read the date the notice was published?
July 13th, 2020 in the Des Moines Register.
Have we received any written comments?
The Plan and Zoning Commission, by a vote of 6 yes with 1 abstaining, adopted a resolution recommending approval of the PUD amendment.
All right, now would be the time for anyone in the audience that would like to address the council on item 6C, and I'll start first with people, anyone that's physically present in the council chambers. All right, seeing no one, we'll ask for anyone that's on the phone that would like to address the council on item 6C. All right, hearing no one, I'll declare the public hearing closed. This is an ordinance for the first reading. There are no outstanding issues.
Move consideration of first reading.
Second.
Questions or comments on the ordinance? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Ryan?
4 yes, an ordinance amending the Talons Reach Plan Unit Development to modify regulations pertaining to PUD Parcel G.
Move approval of first reading.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? First reading's approved. Item 6D, this is the time and place for a public hearing to consider amendment number 8 to amended and restated Mills Parkway Urban Renewal Area, Subdistrict 8, initiated by the City of West Des Moines. This is continued from the June 15th, 2020 City Council agenda. Ryan, would you please read the date the notice was published?
June 5th, 2020 in the Des Moines Register.
Have you received any written comments?
None, Your Honor.
All right, now would be the time for anyone in the audience who would like to address the City Council on item 6D, and I'll start with anyone that's physically in the council chambers. All right, seeing no one, I'll ask anyone on the phone that would like to address the council on item 6D. All right, hearing no one, I'll declare the public hearing closed. Again, we have a resolution and an ordinance which we have to take separately. There are no outstanding issues, so I need a motion to approve the urban renewal plan amendment.
Move approval.
Second.
Questions on the urban renewal plan? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Urban renewal plan amendment is approved. Second item is the ordinance for the first reading.
Move consideration of the first reading.
Second.
Questions or comments on the ordinance? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Ryan?
4 yes, an ordinance amending ordinance numbers 1384, 1560, 1740, 1800, 1824, 2014, 2072, and 2314, providing that general property tax is levied and collected each year on property located within the amended Mills Parkway Urban Renewal Area be paid to a special fund for payment of principal and interest on loans, monies advanced to, and indebtedness, including bonds issued or to be issued, incurred by the city in connection with the amended Mills Parkway Urban Renewal Area.
Move approval of the first reading.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? First reading is approved. Item 6E, the council's being asked to continue that to the August 17th, 2020 council agenda.
Move continuation.
All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That item is continued. 6F. This is the time and place for a public hearing to consider vacation of a portion of Southeast Moffett Lake Road right-of-way initiated by the City of West Des Moines. Ryan, would you please read the date the notice was published?
July 15th, 2020 in the Des Moines Register.
Do you have received any written comments?
None, Your Honor.
All right, now would be the time for anyone in the audience who would like to address the council on item 6F, and I'll start with anyone physically present in the council chambers. All right, seeing no one, I'll ask anyone on the phone that would like to address the council on item 6F. And this was really just an oversight. This was intended to be vacated in the last action, but it wasn't included in the original description. All right, hearing no one, I'll declare the public hearing closed. Again, this is an ordinance for the first reading.
Move consideration of the reading.
Second.
Any questions or comments on the ordinance? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, Ryan?
4 yes, an ordinance of the City of West Des Moines, Iowa, vacating as public right-of-way a portion of Moffett Lake Road.
Move approval of the first reading.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay, the first reading is approved. Item 6G, the council's being asked to continue that to the August 3rd, 2020 council agenda.
Move to continue.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Any abstentions? That item's continued. 6H, the council's also being asked to continue this item to the August 3rd, 2020 council agenda.
Move continuation.
Second.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That item is continued. 6I, this is the time and place for a public hearing to consider South Service Area Segment 4 and 10 sewers initiated by the City of West Des Moines. Ryan, would you please read the date the notice was published?
July 10th, 2020 in the Des Moines Register.
Have you received any written comments?
There was one correspondence received late this afternoon, and that's been placed on the dais in front of you this evening.
And that was from Misty Witter and Lee, and I know we've had a lot of working relationships with the Witter family and their property, so I know progress is being made. I talked to Tom before the meeting on some of those issues, and those continue to be worked on. So appreciate that. Now would be the time for anyone in the audience who'd like to address the council on item 6I, and I'll start again with anybody physically present in the council chambers. All right, seeing no one, I'll ask if there's anyone on the phone that wants to address the council on item 6I. Okay, hearing no one, I need a motion on the resolution to approve the acquisition of agricultural property.
Move approval of the resolution as written.
Any other questions or comments on 6I?
Mayor, you said that staff continues to work with the Witterns to make sure that the alignment is, and some of the issues are worked out on this?
Yeah, they're going to continue to work on
Okay.
that as they go forward. So,
Okay.
Tom, I don't know if there's anything else you want to add?
Well, with that assurance, as long as I know we'll work with them, so hammer out the issues.
Yeah, which we did on Veterans Parkway too. Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, that item is approved. Item 6J, this is the time and place for a public hearing to consider Veterans Parkway enhancements, Phase 1, Gateway, and median features initiated by the city of West Des Moines. Ryan, would you please read the date the notice was published?
July 10th, 2020 in the Des Moines Register.
Have you received any written comments?
None, Your Honor.
All right, now would be the time for anyone in the audience who would like to address the council on item 6J. And again, we'll start with anyone physically present in the council chambers. All right, seeing no one, we'll ask anyone on the phone that would like to address the council on item 6J. Okay, hearing no one, I'll declare the public hearing closed. We have two resolutions and a motion which we can take together, and the staff is recommending that all three add alternatives be accepted.
Move approval of resolutions 1 and 3.
Second.
Any other questions or comments on 6J?
I would just say how proud I am of the development of this parkway.
Mhm.
I mean, we got the folded flags out there, and now we're going to have additional signage and monuments that are going to recognize veterans for their service. And you know, we've had conversations with the VFW who continually throughout the development of this road, and they're continuing to look at other projects that are potentially going to go here. We're trying to iron out some of the details and whether or not that can come to fruition. But, you know, it just really makes me proud to look at how this is developing and the tributes that we're putting there to veterans who have served.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that as well. I know that when I was first elected 3 or so years ago, I would go to the Hy-Vee every morning and see this group almost every morning at Hy-Vee, right up there on Civics Mill, and they would pull me aside and show me their works and show me their dreams and talk about what they want to do. And I think piece by piece, they're seeing things come to fruition, which makes them so proud. And they're so dedicated, and all they really want is their history preserved right here in West Des Moines. So that this is moving incrementally along is really a blessing for this city, and really a true testimony to what these veterans deserve.
I think I shared with you when we did the ribbon cutting for the folded flags, I actually rode on the bus back with some veterans, and one of the veterans sitting next to me came down from Fort Dodge. So I think veterans all over the state appreciate what we're doing in West Des Moines, not only the veterans in the city of West Des Moines. I think they're all celebrating what we're doing and appreciate it.
Agreed.
Fantastic.
Okay, all in favor of 6J, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Those items pass. Item 7, new business, Browns Woods Hollow Plat 1, Veterans Parkway at Southeast Hollow Court, subdivide property into 25 lots for single-family development, 3 public street lots, and 1 outlot for stormwater detention, Browns Woods Hollow LLC. This is a resolution to acceptance of public improvements and approval and release of the final plat, and there are no outstanding issues.
Move approval of the resolution.
Second.
Questions or comments?
And these people get to enjoy the lovely things that we're putting on Veterans Parkway, so it'll be great.
All All right, all in favor of 7A, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Resolution's approved. 7B, the Wilder Pines Plat 1, 1,000 and 1,100 South 60th Street. Subdivide property into 11 lots for single-family development, the Pines LLC. This is a resolution to approve the preliminary plat. There are no outstanding issues. Staff has requested a modification to condition approval number 3, and staff's also requested an additional condition of approval, item number 4, be included in the motion.
Move approval with those two being included from staff.
Second.
Any other questions or comments on 7B? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Preliminary plats approved. Item 7C, Midtown redevelopment, 1221 through 1261 8th Street. Approval of a preliminary plat and a site plan to allow development of a commercial and residential vertical mixed-use development, JGC Holdings LLC. This is a resolution to approve the preliminary plat and site plan. There are no outstanding issues.
Move approval.
Second.
Questions or comments?
I would just say I'm excited for this development to go through. I'm not 100% certain what all is going to be going here, but I've heard some things that are going here, and this is going to be great improvement to the area, and can't wait to see this happen.
Other than one of the buildings they're tearing down was my orthodontist.
Oh, really? Well, he did a good job.
Well,
You know, your teeth
and
are still
actually, as
together. I didn't wear
painful as
my
it is,
retainer.
I've never gone back into the buildings. Okay, all in favor of item 7C, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? It's always great to see redevelopment.
Yeah, no doubt.
Appreciate that. Item 7D, Jordan House, 2296 Fuller Road, create one parcel for transfer of ownership and approve accept of lot tie agreement, West Des Moines Historical Society, Inc. This is a resolution to approve and release the plat of survey, and there are no outstanding issues.
Move approval.
Move, second.
Questions or comments?
I'm excited to see that
Oh, yeah.
obviously things are moving
Yeah.
forward with
Yeah.
this, and they can go forward with their plans, hopefully, and preserve our history.
Well,
It's
and
a
a
great
special
thing.
thanks to Scott Hatfield.
Yes.
Scott has worked tirelessly on this, and it's not been an easy project. So special thanks to Scott.
Anytime you have a slice of history right in the middle of your town, well, I mean, not in the middle, but in your town, because when it comes to the Jordan House and, well, you know me, history teacher and whatnot, not every town in America has stations on the Underground Railroad. And so why would we not want to just give them every opportunity to make it as great as it can be? So
Right. And the exciting thing
awesome.
about this is that you're going to be able to take field trips here. Right now, they can't accommodate a lot of the students in the current space. So this is going to be a great learning experience for the kids in our school and all around the area, really.
yes.
Okay, all in favor of 7D, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That is approved. Item 8, there are no items to receive, file, and/or refer. Item 9, other matters. We've got item 9A, a comprehensive plan land use map update, which we'll go to. But before I forget, are there any other matters that any council member wants to raise before we go through the comp plan? Okay, Lynn, it's all yours. I guess, I don't know, Tom, do you want to offer any, high-level comments before we get started? There's one or two things I'd like to raise, and I sent them out in that email today, just because I've been through this a number of times, and I think there's a better way to do this than some, so.
I can tell you that Lynn and her staff have worked tirelessly to bring this document forward. And I think I've said this before, but they did a great job doing outreach to the community was it last summer? It seems like longer ago than that. But they had all kinds of events and opportunities and signage. And they got a lot of feedback, and they went out to get it, that they didn't ask for it to come in. And so when we go forward with this, tonight she's kind of starting with the best starts first, because really in a comprehensive plan, in spite of all the great things that are in it, people are most interested in land use. And so we're starting with that tonight, and Lynn's going to go through it and show kind of how we got there and what it was, and what, if there's changes, what's going to change from what to whatever the zoning it would change into, give you background there. And then we're systematically going to go through the chapters of it for different meetings. We'll get a schedule out that It'll be presented, you have some questions, and you'll come back and hopefully say, yeah, we're good with this, or if you have questions, we'll address those and then get this thing done. So
So is this just a quick overview, Tom?
this is just the land use tonight,
We're gonna
Russ.
go more into it in depth at some point in time.
Yeah, I think, and again, I've been through this a few times. I think it works better. 99% of the people pull out the comp plan to look at what the land use is.
Right.
That's where they
Agreed.
start. And
Agreed.
Dick, you and I have had this conversation. We need to consistently rezone this once we've adopted the land use, because when we do rezonings and people think they can stop that, but we're just making it consistent. But what I like is for Lynn to give an overview of any of the areas of the comp plan that staff thinks we should change the land uses on going forward and why. I'd like to come back in 2 weeks, have everyone ask their questions and try to get a consensus on approving the actual land uses on the map itself. And then we can do the consistency rezoning. But last time, and I'm not suggesting we have as many public hearings as we did last time, but it seemed to work better to take a chapter or two and go through them each that way. People seem to feel better about it, but I'm just telling you, 99% of the concern is the map. But the language can sneak up on people too, so we got to pay attention to that. So that I think is probably the best way. And I just want to make sure that the conversation is all in public meetings, not that anyone's trying to hide anything. But this, to me, as I said in the email today, I think this is the most important thing that's going to happen. And usually this goes 5 to 10 years before it gets wholesale looked at again. So this is really, really important. And I just want to make sure everyone has hears the same information. And in fairness to everyone, they hear the same questions, and that our residents have a chance to participate in that too. So I don't know if we threw you off with all that, Lynn, with the information you gave us.
That's
okay.
Yeah.
But you guys are adaptable, or you
Yeah.
wouldn't be here doing this.
Well,
There you go.
last time we went over this is when I got elected in 2009, came in here in 2010, and I asked the mayor, do the meetings always go till 11 o'clock at night? Because we were dealing with, the comprehensive plan update, and we were here, I don't know how many different council meetings, 10:30, 11 o'clock. Sometimes we'd have a executive session afterwards. And so it's quite a lot to go through. So I just hope that we can get through this and understand all of what's in front of us. I hope that for the council, that we can look at this. It's our job to make the best city that we possibly can. It's the developer's job to make as much money as they possibly can. And somewhere these things combine and connect. I'm hoping that's here, but we got to try to keep the politics out of this as much as possible and do what's best for the city and the residents. So.
Hey, Lynn, did we reach out to other cities? Because when we look at the southwest portion and the southern portion of West Des Moines, I mean, the expansion opportunities are clearly large. And I didn't know if we'd looked to other cities for guidance on what kind of things they had done in the past that have worked, so we're not necessarily reinventing the wheel.
We look for them to their comp plan themselves to see what they are planning for their area. I wouldn't say that we have necessarily reached out to them to say what's worked in your community versus what's not. I would honestly say most of those that are kind of sitting to the south and to the west of us have looked to us to see what's been working, and they've put that into their comp plan for the most part.
Oh, sure.
Well, and a number of
it's
years
kinda
ago,
going
we
the
went
other
through that whole major corridor infrastructure with them. So we went from Waukee to Cumming over to Norwalk, and they appreciated what we all put together. So we actually have been kind of leading this whole conversation.
Yeah, and I know Norwalk's been reaching out to Brian's group of engineering about some modeling and things that are going on.
Yeah.
So there's definitely conversations going on as to what each community is doing. We are not necessarily trying to recreate the wheel with what they're doing, because we think we're going to do it in a different way, quite honestly. But I'm going to start off first just kind of telling you what the intent here is tonight. This is really just a look at the land use map. And it's really just to get your head saying, yep, keep going down the path you're going down. We fully recognize we have a lot more outreach to go through. Quite honestly, what we hope to do is we'll kind of go through this first one tonight. There's probably some other items we'll come back to you with that we'll need direction on. Once we're comfortable with that, we intend to go back out to all the developers, as well as the landowners, just start sectioning off the city, trying to have outreach meetings, inviting them to them and saying, here's what you got today, here's what we're proposing, here's what it's different, here's how it helps you. And really kind of trying to walk them through it before we ever come back for true adoption, so that we don't have to have countless meetings of people standing at the dais saying, but I want this.
Right.
So hopefully we can get out and do that. Same idea with the text document. That still has some work to be done to it. We intend to push that out to the public, kind of get their initial comments. So we can kind of vet it through. That's obviously after you guys get to see it first. But so our mindset is kind of coming to you first, making sure we're not pushing out something that you're going to go, time out. We don't want to do any of this. So that's really what we're here to do, is just kind of get the heads nodding. There are a lot of pieces because there's things that are different in this one than what we've ever done. There's zoning code changes that have to come into play. Steve mentioned it earlier, watershed, stormwater management, transportation plan, because that's kind of going to be pulled out and be somewhat of a separate document.
That's a big one for me.
There's a new parks and recreation plan that'll have to go into play because we're bringing in a lot more residential than what they have today. So there's a lot of pieces that need to come on board about the same time. We're hoping to get to that point where everybody's saying, yep, we would adopt this today if you asked, but we recognize that we've got to get to these other things done before we can bring it all together.
Maybe a couple other ground rules. Why don't you, we'll try, and we're not very good at this, we'll try to hold our questions until you stop at some point and say, okay, do you have, you tell us where you want to stop to ask questions. I think if we wait the whole thing, I don't know if we can, we can do that. I don't think we can do that as a group. So why don't you, at some points during your presentation, say, okay, now does anybody have any questions on what I just presented? If you'll help us, otherwise I can't manage this process.
I'll behave myself.
I violated as much as anybody else. The second thing is I appreciate your comments in the email that you sent, that you're trying to look for ways to be more flexible. I think most people start to resent comp plans because they seem to be so dictatorial that there's just no room to maneuver. And I think as long as we have flexibility in this thing, I think, as I've said, because I work for one of them, no one wants their development to be more successful than the developer. And most of the benefits we've had, there have been local people whose family is here and they want to make sure that it's successful. So I applaud the comments about we're trying to figure out ways to allow more flexibility, but yet control the planning. We get really high compliments on how well planned your community is. And this goes back 50 years. I mean, we want to have big box retail in every single major corner in our city. So we've got quadrants. The other thing I want to make sure is we've got to make sure that we understand what the market wants, because we can't use this to dictate what we want if the market doesn't want it. So I'll try not to give any more overview. You can tell that.
I do have a comment though, and I totally agree with you. I like the flexibility that they're building into the plan. I think that's excellent. That makes a lot of sense. So we're not having to do a lot of comp plan amendments and whatnot. And there's, more flexibility to do different things on the same parcel. But we also do, with that flexibility, have to be very careful so that we can at least give residents that do their due diligence something to look at, that they can say, okay, I'm okay with moving to this home because what's in my backyard is either going to be this, or this, but if it's so flexible that they don't know, they can't plan then, so that was my comment as we went through it. And I'm interested to see how you guys got down to something that was flexible, yet gave the residents and the other business owners that are already there a way to know what potentially could be in their backyard.
And you're absolutely right. When we talked to you, that was the one thing you had told us. Love the flexibility. Where's the assurance to who's buying what, so what we know. Mm-hmm. So tell me, do you have a screen on your screen? Does it say 24 land use classifications? Yep. Perfect. So this is what we have adopted today. And to Steve, to your point that it pigeonholes you so much, 24 land use classifications. Why do we need 24 of them when 11 of them alone are commercial items? So what we started doing is kind of saying, this matches identical to our zoning code. If one's a guiding document, one's the rules, they really don't need to match up identically. One needs to provide the path and what the idea is, the other one will set those rules to it. So what we've done is we tried to take a look at why are those colors on the map what they are, and last time that they were done, it was pretty much, it's anybody's guess. We had a lot of people standing up saying, but I want red or I want blue because red is commercial and blue is office, and that gets me the most value price per square foot, so that's what I wanted. Or we well, we think we're going to have this major road that might need to be assessed. Therefore, we got to keep our land values up here to pay for that road. Neither one are the best ways to do about putting the colors on the map. So we really tried to find a way to say the colors on the map are what they are because of certain reasons. The biggest one is the environmental aspects. This is part of the West Des Moines 2036 plan, that chapter strategy 4.1 is all environmental areas will be mapped and preserved. So this is starting to do that, is starting to take a look at that. And granted, you can't really tell the details in this map itself, but we looked at slopes. We basically said anything that's 35% or greater, we really should not be touching it. And that might even be too high of a percentage. It really might be 25. We went with 35. We've identified the drainage areas, and that's kind of what you're seeing right through the middle here. You have floodway, you have 100-year, what used to be called the 100-year floodplain, you have the 500-year floodplain. We really shouldn't be developing in those areas. And then the West Des Moines is growing into some areas, not only from a topography standpoint, but we've got a lot of trees and character that's out there. So how do we want to preserve that and be something different? Some of the things, we hear is, yeah, it's easy to develop in Waukee, but there's not a tree in sight. Well, we really don't want to be that. We have a lot of that. And how do we preserve that? And how do we capitalize on that? So those were the three main things we've done to date. We could also add in endangered species and habitats. It's a little bit harder to do. Archaeological sites, it'd be great to do, but the state's not going to tell us where exactly they're at. They're going to tell us it's in a quarter section, which when you start mapping, it doesn't help you a lot. Well, they don't want people to go find them and dig them. They want to know that what's happening on them. So that's one of the things. So we went ahead and did the environmentally sensitive, and you'll notice on a map that's going to come up, we just hatched those areas. We put a land use color under them, and it was really just to draw that awareness to it that, hey, there's something more on here. Don't buy it and think you can just easily develop it. It's going to take a little bit more thought and a little bit more effort to do it. Not to say that you can't develop it unless we put some preservation ordinances in place, but that's the thought. Another aspect that we wanted to map and draw the colors, we heard through outreach that people want to be able to walk to those commercial areas. They want to be able to hop on their bike. They don't necessarily want to get in their cars when they don't have to. They're not willing to give up their cars, but they want that option too. So we did it very intentionally. We tried to place our commercial areas so that we always had a commercial area within either a quarter mile or a half a mile of the residential. Quarter mile is about a 5-minute walk. Half a mile is about a 10-minute walk. Figuring that's doable for the majority of people. We have some adjustments to do, and you kind of see the arrows are pointing out some spots where that'd be single family that doesn't have that within 5 to 10-minute walk. The hatching that you're seeing on here, though, is telling me that it's an environmental area. It may not be servable that easily. So that's something we're going to continue to work through and make sure we're refining it down. Helps us tell us where those yellow colors should be, where those what used to be red colors should be. The other one that we're taking a look at in engineering services, and Eric Peterson has done a great job. If you remember the first map, the roads were on there in a grid format, even though we're not in flat ground. So Eric's done a really good job of starting to take a look at the topography and make a lot more sense of what those roads are. A street network is critical. Well, how many levels do we have to have on the map starts becoming part of that question. That's something we're going to have some direction from you on. And do streets drive the land use, or do the land uses drive the need for the streets? If not for the development, do I need a road? So we need to find that balance between how can we make sure we're getting a good network, but not necessarily saying every road has to go in just because hierarchy says you're going to have a minor collector every so many feet kind of thing. So that's something we're going to take a look at. We think there's some ways to do it, even if we kind of said, I think everything over a 4-lane road should be on this map, because most people are going to object to something that's more the 4 lanes. 3 lanes where it's really more a turn lane in the middle, a lot of people don't necessarily object to that. So can we do something to identify where those key connection points have to be, but not put them on the map? You'll run into some colors, we'll start sending a lot of that idea anyway. So back in, almost 3 years ago now, the planners got together, and it's just been the planners that have looked at this. And we just said, well, we want a map just in case areas start to explode, like Southwest Grand Prairie Parkway, and over here it just opened up. Iowa 5, we had Microsoft that came through, and we got a lot more infrastructure there. So we said, we need a map just in case. everything kind of blows up on us, that we know where we're headed. So we're not just kind of shooting from the hip. So this is what we came up with. You can see we dropped it down to the 10 land use classifications. That's really because what we did is we combined a lot of that commercial all into one commercial. My comp plan just needs to let you know it's going to be a commercial. It doesn't need to let you know it's going to be highway commercial or sport commercial or any of the other commercials. That's where the zoning comes back into play. So we were able to, like I said, knock it down a little bit, and then you can kind of see it's a little faint, but you can see this hatching that's all over the place in this map. And that was those environmental characteristics. That's that first slide that we looked at, where it starts just saying, something's here. Take a little more care when you're looking at it. So when we started going through that last map, we kind of said, well, this is great, but reality is, even in these land uses, you can have such a wide range of intensity to it. I can have something that's basically not going to impact anybody, and I can have something that really is. And the example that I used in the memo I sent you was the grocery store. I can have a 35,000 square foot grocery store that's only open 8 to 8, or I can have a 100,000 square foot grocery store that's open 24/7. They both fall into the red. So how does, on this map, how do you start playing that in, factoring that in? Same thing would happen with industrial. You can have a real heavy industrial user, or what we're seeing a lot of now is kind of that there's really no impacts, no external impacts, but yet because they're industrial, we say you can't go into certain places. So how can we start looking a little bit more at the operational and that activity level, and looking at them from that impact to who's around me? How can we start levering that in? So we really did this map, which is the one you saw before. It just took some of the colors and jumped them together. So it's saying your office and your commercial, your industrial are those higher intense uses. So the commercial all became the red and the purple, red and the blue combined. When you combine red and blue, you get purple. So that's what all your purple is. That's all your higher intense commercial office uses. It even took and put the medium and the high density, put those together into the brown areas. So you can do anything. If your single family is truly just the yellow, the browns are anything multifamily. So it just lumped them together in that sense, and then pulled together all the industrial, business park, warehouse, retail, all those kind of bigger footprint, more truck driven mindsets in there. We thought this maybe went a little bit too far, because I have no way to kind of say what those assurances that Russ wanted to what's really going to be next door if I just do it by intensity alone. So we started looking for a way to kind of how do we marry up flexibility by combining those uses, but starting to get back to having some ways to control that. So what I was just saying with that, the multi-use or the office or the commercial that can be at the opposite ends of the spectrum there, that's kind of where the purples now come into this play. So your multi-use districts, low, medium, and high, which starts playing into your intensity, that is picking up your office, your commercial, your high density or attached residential apartments, and your industrial low, which is really that no impact industrial. Any of those uses actually can fall into the purples. And this map, on my screen anyway, it's not very good about distinguishing the three colors of purple, but there's three different levels that are built into here.
Lynn, can you give me an example of an industrial low you were mentioning earlier? If it's like no impact outside the building, can you give me just an example?
The one that comes to mind the most, which kind of started setting this in motion, there's a gentleman down in VJ who actually has the bike shop on 6th, the corner there. He actually has a seed counting business there. He manufactures seed counting equipment in part of that building. We didn't know about it till he came in to do something with the bike shop. So Ray started raising that question. If I don't know what's going on in the building, you're not impacting anybody on the outside. He's industrial. I had to tell him, technically, you can't be operating here because my code says industrial is not allowed in BJHB or BJC. So we wanted a way to kind of be able to start separating those out, that just because you SIC, our standard industrial classification, says you're industrial, do you really act, look, and feel like industrial? It's kind of the same idea with residential. You can have detached townhomes that look, act, and feel like single family, but my code today would say you have to be in medium density just because you're a townhome. So we're trying to look at operationally, how do those things differ and not just lump them all together.
Mhm.
So that would be one is, like I said, there's no real truck traffic, there's no real lot of deliveries, there's not a lot of people coming and going, it's not open 24/7. Those are the things that we start looking at and trying to let those be the way to separate and control, mitigate what we have to do.
I ask because of the labels, almost. You hear the word industrial, all of a sudden, it doesn't matter
Exactly.
what you say after that point. And I didn't know if the labels were decided yet too.
No, we can still play around with these labels. There's really, the terms are just there to kind of try to describe it the best we can at this point. I think the industrial low and the industrial high is just trying to set that message of intensity level is there's really nothing, or there's a very high intense.
Thank you.
Your high intense is your Amazon warehouses.
Mhm.
They have 200 semis sitting in a parking lot at any given time. They have trucks coming and going, they operate 24/7. So it's just trying to set that stage for that differences, but certainly we can look into trying to come up with a different name for that industrial low that doesn't have that scariness to it. However, I'll say the next piece of the puzzle that starts coming into play, this one just kind of explains what each of those categories are. So again, we have this, we have more flexibility built in, we have these intensity levels built in, but how do we start really painting that picture to somebody else as to what's going to happen there? So we started getting into, it's kind of a new planning approach that's coming into play called place types. And you already know the place types at the highest level. It is your residential, it's your commercial, it's your industrial. It already sets a picture in your mind when you hear those terms. But then how do we start taking it up to that next level, which starts playing into what Russ wants? He wants that assurances of what can happen next door to me. So place types really become the bridge between zoning and land use. It kind of starts painting a better picture as to what can go into each of those colors. So,
I'm sorry, can you go back the slide? Can you just leave it up there a second? I want to. Okay, so we've got the open space, we've got detached residential, which is just single family. That's the same. We got mixed residential, which has a potential for single family, multifamily. We're talking about single family and townhomes, row houses, duplexes. Okay. And so
can
the
be attached, can be
multi-use-
detached, can be everything.
Okay. So you could have within a neighborhood all these different mixes. You could have, row houses and a duplex. You could have single family and row house. I mean, all of this could be intermixed on the same block.
Possibly. There's the next step to it, but yes,
Okay,
possibly.
okay.
It's the idea that you're going to open up that flexibility so that you can start using kind of an intermingling. So if you think of where the single family is, this mixed residential starts becoming that almost that transition between that single family and those commercial areas. Not to say that you can't have single family detached in that mixed residential. It also means you can have some attached product in that residential. The next step of that is how big, what's that size of those units that we can have? How do we start respecting the next door neighbor when we're starting to develop? But it opens up that whole orange. If I want to do some yellow in the orange, I can do yellow in the orange.
Okay.
I can't do orange in
Orange
the
and
yellow.
yellow, no. And if you want to do apartments, that's not yellow or orange.
Apartments are in the orange.
They are orange.
Definitely not in the yellow, but they are in the orange, but they're also in the purples.
Gosh, I wish there was a way we get the apartments out of the orange, just because, I'll never forget that meeting that we had somebody going to put an apartment building in orange, right? And we're all sitting here. I mean, everybody, when they see orange, they think townhomes, condos, they don't think apartments.
Mhm.
Apartments are brown, I think the council learned something in that meeting. I don't think anybody wanted to admit it, but if the density is low enough, it can go in orange. And I think that was kind of a shocker. I think there are people out there that go, hey, I'm fine in my single family home, backing to a row house, a townhome, condo, as long as it's not apartments. That's too high of a density, too many cars, too many people. but we still have that in this. I mean, I applaud you. I think this is
Time
really
out.
good.
Let me keep
but-
going.
Okay. keep going. Keep
Because
going.
quite honestly, Russ, if we're going to start getting some affordability, we
Yeah,
have to open
I-
up some of these areas.
I
But let me
know.
keep going
I,
on how
and I
we,
love that. I do.
how we get
but
past what you're
Okay.
saying.
I just wanted to look at it to make sure that I know what it is. I got that. Go ahead.
So like I said, we're leading our way into the place
The mayor
types.
warned us that it would be hard to.
I know.
Down-
Greg
down there.
started it.
We made it about 12 minutes.
I was impressed.
Let's
I
let her
mean,
get some more behind her.
all right, go ahead.
So when you start getting into place types going from that highest level by starting to come down, these are the things that you're going to start looking at. So they're the characteristics of development in general. We already do them in zoning. It's just now starting to paint that picture kind of a little more upfront. So place types really start telling us what those areas are like. So to your point, Russ, there's all sorts of different types of residential that we can do, and what's that picture look like? If you looked at the packet that I had given you over the weekend, just apologize to the people in the audience because we tried to pare this down. You know, that's what these are doing for you. So the picture images that you were seeing with some of those, that starts telling you what you're going to do. It kind of gives you that brief description of it, paints some pictures of it, but then it starts breaking it apart and saying, okay, when I'm next to yellow, I can only do an apartment building that's 4 units or 6 units or whatever that number is that we decide to do it with. I can do a detached residential next to it, or I can do X, or I can do Y. It starts painting those pictures and putting people into, you got to pick where you want to be, but there's going to be those parameters already built in. So when I buy that yellow, that lot in yellow, I know exactly what's going to be next to me. If I'm in the middle of that yellow, I'm guaranteed it's all single family detached around me. If I'm on the edge of the yellow next to the orange or next to a purple, that's where I can start having something across the street or next door that maybe is a little bit different. But we still can monitor the transitioning that happens, controlling the mass, controlling the heights, controlling the density, so that it's not as impactful. So that's what we're going to start looking at and doing. So again, we came up with 21 different place types. These are the types of development that we really have had to date or that we feel is appropriate for West Des Moines as we continue to grow. Like I said, these gave, what I gave to you in the memo, it explains each and every one of them. We could walk through them all, but I don't think we want to really take the time to do that. So a lot of different ones. Your community neighborhood commercial is no real different than your neighborhood commercial. Neighborhood center is about the same as a neighborhood commercial today. Community center is really the same thing as community commercial zoning today. Regional, same idea. Live, work, play is something that's kind of newer. We're going to push a little bit more. Trying to push the campuses. Breaks out the residential a little bit more so as to which ones can be in different districts. So this matrix then kind of starts telling you. So if I want to be in mixed residential, I can do a conservation neighborhood, which we all kind of know what conservation is. They cluster the houses, try to preserve as much of the open space. I can be an intermediate residential. So I'd come over to these place types and we'd look up which one is intermediate residential. What it's telling me is it's ranging from detached dwellings to attached multifamily buildings in a residential only project. So no commercial component in there. It varies in the size. And then it starts looking at which color I'm in of the land use. Well, this is orange. So this one is suggesting you could go up to 10 dwelling units per unit. So you could start having some apartment buildings in there. You would just, your density starts getting limited. Now, as I move towards the purple, that density goes up a little bit. So it starts, you know, pushing and pulling where you're doing things to try to recognize what's next to it.
That's good.
So again, the attached residential. So for this illustration, I could be in the orange, I could be in the light purple, I could be in the middle purple. So it starts opening up how many different areas somebody can go to do that product. This is all in the yellow. So this is kind of where we're starting to talk place types and those intensities. All three of these could be in the yellow along with the rural residential and the conservation. So you can see there's a different pattern that's happening here. There's a different density that's happening here. This is a traditional neighborhood. Again, different pattern, different density that comes with it. Small lot, Village of Ponderosa, different pattern, different density that comes with it. They're all single family detached homes. So we're trying not to pigeonhole into saying you have to absolutely build this. We're trying to control what that looks and feels like when it's done. So we gave you a couple tables that really kind of walks through the different residential and commercial levels. You start looking at the density differences, the building size differences, and you can kind of start seeing how things ramp up and they become a little bit more intense or they're kept a little bit lower. Same idea with the live, work, play, place type. So that first one was anything could happen in the single family and it has a different intensity to it. This is now saying this same place type itself can have a different intensity depending on what color I'm putting it in. So if I'm in a lightest purple, I'm something like a VJ. I'm a Main Street. I'm a smaller, maybe a 2 block by 2 block area. My heights are limited. My building sizes are limited. I'm a little bit smaller hometown feel to it. If I get into that medium purple, that high next level of intensity of commercial, I'm a little bit more, I'm maybe more like a Prairie Trail in their little development area where they kind of have that centered area. I have a lot of residential around me, but I have a little bit more activity going on. The building heights are probably a little bit higher. You're probably a little bit bigger of an area that you're covering. The intensity starts ramping up. The activities start ramping up. Even the uses that we would allow in there start ramping up. In the highest purple, it could be something like the Light and Power District. It could be a San Antonio Riverwalk. It could be, so you can see it's starting to try to break it apart and say, what are you really doing for us to tell you where you're going to go, rather than just saying, nope, you can't do that because you're one of them. You can't be in for this part. So
This is really good.
So I know it sounds all confusing, but it really gets easier once we start getting into some of these scenarios. And I don't know if you really want me to walk through them tonight, but so again, this is that future land use map that we would propose today as just these characteristics, as it's really 5 districts with 3 intensity levels is really what it amounts to. So this is where we would go. Like I said, single family would only be the yellow or the pale yellow on my computer, would all be single family detached. And you can tell that just because we called it detached residential.
Would it be too complicated to overlay this on the existing one so we can see? I don't know that there's huge changes.
We think the changes that are going to happen, you're going to have a few areas that are maybe commercial or office today that are going to drop down to residential.
Right.
But that's really probably going to be because there was topography there. There's some kind of feature there that says I'm better off as a smaller footprint building. Most people, we think, even if I had red or blue today, you're probably going to gain the browns and the grays that can also come with it. We can overlay it, but what we didn't do on our map today, there is no property boundaries on this map. You could not go find, I own this piece of ground, it's right here, you can see the boundaries.
Yeah.
You can't do that on this map. You can go by some landmarks.
Right.
And you can get close.
But I think that's okay
can't.
for, I think that's okay for us. We don't need to know the individual parcels, who owns them. But I'm just interested in, okay, for the last 20 years, this was office, and we're suggesting it goes to residential because of this. This was, single family residential, and we think it should be mixed use because of this. Those major category changes, I think, is probably more relevant to us to have some thoughts on it. And I'm not so sure now that I've sat through this that we're not better off having that 30,000 foot discussion and then let you take this out to the actual developers and property owners to get their input. Because that's who we represent. But I think it'd be helpful to us to say, okay, for the last 10 or 15 or 20 years, this is office, and we think it should be medium density residential or apartments because of this. So we can understand that
What's the
notion.
reasoning? Yeah, what's the reasoning behind it?
So then when you go out to the developers and the landowners, at least the elected officials have said, yeah, it makes some sense. We haven't voted on it yet, but that makes sense for that reason. That might be a better use of everybody's time.
What we can do is we know one area that really drastically changed is this southeast quadrant.
Yeah.
It is drastically different because the majority of it was business park before. And,
Right.
We're not going to do thousands of acres of business park. I don't even have people asking for business park in general. So we could take a look and do that with this one down here to just kind of be able to explain how those uses have changed and why. That's the one that's going to have the most changes to it in the long run.
In
We
the
can certainly
Northwest
come
and the
back
Southwest, I worked on the Northwest as a part of the mall. That was now over 10 years ago.
Yeah. I'd have to
So-
look to see how far the visioning pushed out. the West Side Visioning Plan.
Yeah, unless the council feels otherwise, I think that's a better use of our time now, so that at least when you go out, everyone's had some ideas of, yeah, that seems to make sense. Now let's get specific comments. Go get the comments, because that's who we represent, and then we can really dig into it.
Okay.
As long as we dig into it, I don't disagree. I mean, but as long as we can dig into it at
Yeah.
some point in time, and I think it is important to have that understanding as to why this is the way that it is. Because of course, there's going to be somebody in here anybody who, goes from a red down to a yellow is going to say, no, wait a minute. That's not right. That needs to stay red.
Right, but I think
And
why.
we need to know why it's yellow, and does it make sense being yellow?
But if we do it this way, then we're really just focused on the areas of disagreement. And quite frankly, we've had so many people change office to residential because they can generate income today.
Yeah.
We may not get as many people raising issues as we have in the past. I called it zoning for dollars because everybody wanted the highest intensity you could possibly get. I think people are viewing the world differently.
Yeah.
But it just seems like this is some really good work that we're
Yes.
better off having the conversation once we get specific input. But let us understand the major changes.
Yeah.
And make sure that we can say, okay, that should go from office to residential or whatever it might be. And see where the mixed use ones are. Let us have a 30,000 foot shot. And then we can turn you guys loose to go out and meet with people and talk.
Mayor, just so I'm tracking, so can you say it maybe in a slightly different way of what you're proposing? In other words, I kind of thought this was a 30,000 foot view. I mean, we don't have like specific, to your point, specific properties identified or whatever. And so you're saying.
What I'm suggesting is that you take this recommendation and you come back in 2 weeks and say, this used to be office for the last 15 years and we think it's residential. This used to be residential and we think it should be mixed use in the big chunks, so that we understand that and it makes sense to us before they actually go out. Because if all of us say, wait a minute, that's crazy, we shouldn't do that, leave it office.
Right.
We don't want you to go out in the public with, so that's what I'm suggesting.
Yeah, I really like that approach because I think it allows us to examine where there might be some vulnerabilities or where there might be some hotspots, and let's kind of get a sense of what they might be.
And I don't want to get too granular, because if you go out and say, well, we've already had 3 workshops and the council's pretty set on this, they're going to say, wait a minute, I didn't have a chance to put anything. So I don't think it's fair to us to get too granular.
Right, and really what we're looking for is you guys are understanding kind of where we're headed with this, and that you're kind of saying, yep, keep refining it, keep figuring it out. We can certainly come back to you and say, okay, like I said, we can dissect an area and say, well, these are why this area changed. Here's the big things. We applied the same principles all the way across the board, kind of mindset. So
No, I think going from
right now,
24
we're
to
just
10
kind of,
is, yeah.
we don't want to keep going down a multi-use path of intensity levels. If you say, you know what, just put it back to red and blue.
I think
That's what we didn't want.
I am extremely impressed. I mean, I met with you, I can't even remember how many months now with this COVID thing. It seems like we've lived a year and 2 months, but going through this and looking at that flexibility and then trying to hone in and still be, flexible, but let residents know what potentially could be there, enough of what could be there that they can make a decision on what they want to do in their future. You guys have hit a home run in my opinion, on what you have done. I am extremely impressed, and I'm extremely impressed that, one of the criticisms I had of the last comp plan is that you didn't have big swaths of single-family residential. And so you have these really disjointed neighborhoods that are kind of developing all over the place. And then, of course, the more you have that, the more issues you have with things next to it and trying to, move out so that it's less and less intense, or more intense as you get away from that, trying to buffer and whatnot. So I think this is impressive, and I think I think you guys hit it out of the park. But like Steve said, we've got to look at this and try to figure out, what it was, what it is now, and does that make sense? And do we have, it doesn't look like there's a ton of, one of the criticisms we had was put apartments where the apartments should go. People in apartments want to be in highly trafficked corridors with other commercial and kind of a lot of hubbub going on around there. But just put that where they should go and don't put that where maybe single family would be better served. And it looks like you've
Well, and that's
done
what
that
you're
as well.
doing by putting the apartments in the purples, which is also where the commercial and the office is. You're
Yeah.
giving that opportunity to say, okay, right
Yep.
there's an office building. I want to have my apartment building
Yep.
purples.
Yep.
So, and again, where it starts coming into play is where a yellow hits that purple. How do we make sure that single family that's maybe on one side of the street, what are they seeing on the other side of the street?
Right.
And is that street width enough of a separation? Right, today we'd say 150 feet. Is that the right number, or should it be 150 feet from the commercial side? You have to be at least done. So those are some of the details that still need to be worked out, but that's exactly what it's doing. It's trying to put those intensity areas back together.
Yep.
And if I'm the type of person who wants that urban environment, I know I can go move towards those
Right.
orange and the purples, and I'm going to be in the activity
Right.
versus the single family yellow. I'm a little bit farther away from it.
So a couple things that, I know, like the map you've got pulled up here, obviously, a lot of the city's not colored in there, right, to the north and east, right, because it's
That's-
already been developed.
It's already developed.
But what I'd be curious about is what would that look like under this new map, such that we could say, this is what we know what the city looks like as we drive around,
Yeah.
right? But we don't know what these other areas that are on your map here that are colored will look like, and how similar or dissimilar will that look? And, you can kind of get a sense. I'm not saying it's going to be, it's not going to be granular, but from a 30,000 foot view, you might be able to say it's actually very different, or it's actually very similar. So that's just something I think for me would say, hey, when we look at this, it's colors very, you have got a lot of, green next to orange or yellow next to purple, whereas in our existing parts of the cities, we don't have yellow next to orange or greens next to reds or whatever.
Mhm.
I think you get the point.
Yeah.
And the other
We
thing
certainly can.
it's just a thought, right? Anyway.
It's something we knew we'd have to do. We thought
Okay.
we'd kind of get this more flushed out and then we could
Yeah.
go back.
Yep.
So basically you almost have two comp plans, one that's under the old scheme, one that's under the new, get the new one in place and then go back. But for your purpose of
Yeah.
understanding, because you know that development of understanding what those colors start meaning, you can start putting them in place.
How it's applied.
Right. So we do have a list kind of where some of these areas are. So,
Yeah.
light purple, think about here, here, and here.
Yeah.
To kind of get you there. We just didn't
Yep.
put the slide in.
On that topic, Lynn, I don't want to interrupt
Yeah,
you before your second
please.
question here,
Yep.
but so the planner's draft land use map, you said if we were to drop this interim map, this is what would be recommended. If you completed what's in front of you right now on the northern part of the city that you're waiting to see how the rest kind of is fleshed out, would it be different than this planner's draft land? I mean, the colors would be different, but the underlying goal would be the same as this interim map. So in essence, this planner's draft land use map, that would be an interim map, is already incorporating these intellectually, but not actually in the color framing, in the new color coordination of the new
Right.
scheme.
Right. Your darkest purples here are going to be probably your reds. Your medium purples are going to be the reds or the blue areas kind of thing. So
Okay.
yeah, it kind of matches up. Like I said, we certainly, because you know certain areas, we can kind of paint that picture for you of where some of those areas are.
And so
thanks.
thank you, Greg. So what this kind of leads me to is a concept that in the healthcare community, they call the payer mix, right? And the payer mix is how a hospital can survive or not survive. And so what I'm curious about is what's the land use mix? And from a finance standpoint, we know what the mix is currently and what our revenues are and how we're able to do certain things. And going forward, what does this mix look like from a revenue standpoint if it were to get built out? I understand we're talking about flexibility, but we also, I think, it's important to appreciate forecasting. And if we forecast here and we have growth over the course of X 5 or 10 years, whatever this comprehensive plan would be, if it were built out pursuant to this, how would the revenues look like under that plan as compared to maybe
over the last 10 years under our existing plan in older parts of the city? How does it marry up? Would we have more or less revenues? Are we going to be able to sustain some of the things, great things, frankly, that we're doing today into the future if we accommodate something like this? So kind of
That's a great
that
question.
mix,
That's a great thing to look at. I mean, if they can do that, having to maybe take an average of some of these areas. And the other thing that I'd add to that is population. I mean, at one point in time, somebody told me at full build out, we were looking at having maybe 180,000 population in West Des Moines. You know, what is this at full build out? Do we have greater population? Do we have less population? So I would add that. A couple other things that I would add. Number one, I think it's excellent that you did this the way you did, not knowing, obviously, or caring, you know, who owned this parcel or that parcel. That's equivalent to a teacher grading a test without knowing who the student is, right? Which I would benefit from that. If they knew it was me, I'd get a D.
Minus.
Even Mr. Hudson would do that. It was generous.
Just enough so you didn't have to take the class again.
Exactly. And then the other thing that I'd say from a public transportation standpoint, and I think this is important to all of us because, you know, what we're trying to do at DART right now is we are trying to get people where they need to go as efficiently and effectively as possible. And you know, we're constantly looking at routes and trying to do more for less. And one of the things that we're facing at DART is that as communities are planning, they're not really taking into account, you know, where the public transit lines currently are or, you know, where they're likely to go in the future. And so what happens is we go and we build this ideal community. And then all of a sudden somebody comes way over here in the far lower left corner and says, I need a bus route out here. And it's like, well, you know, we didn't plan on that. That's way outside of our planning area. And then we got to provide the service. And if you look at all the communities that DART serves, if it happens a couple times in West Des Moines, it happens a couple times in Urbandale, it happens out in Bondurant and all these, pretty soon the area that we serve in DART is going like this. And we're sitting here as council people going, you know, we got to do better at DART. We got to cut down the cost of providing transportation services. But at the same time that we're saying that, we're making the service area go really, really big. And so I'm trying to encourage, as the chair of DART, the communities as they plan to take that into account and try to help us all to not add to the cost of providing transportation services at DART and then have us come back and yell, why are the costs so high? And I know, Mayor, you say you can't dictate necessarily where development goes, but we need to try to at least plan on some of that.
Hey, Lynn, back what Matt was saying about like the future planning. I'm wondering, Matt, were you kind of meaning almost a mathematical proportionality compared to what we have right now? Because that's a question I had too. Proportionally, we had this percentage, this percentage. Is that what you were kind of meaning, or?
I mean, I see it like, and this is not a great analogy, but the concept of a hospital, if it's 57% Medicare or Medicaid and 20% private pay and 10% whatever else, you know what you need to be operational. If we have 57% open space and 20% residential and the rest business, what does that mean for our revenues going forward? And so where have we been historically? Are we at 10% residential now? We're proposing to go to 30, or are we at 30% now? We're going to 10. And how does that play into, you know, what if we're built out? How would that impact our revenue?
Yeah, I have the same question. It's
That's a great thing to look at. Of course, that's going to change based on what we've done up at the State House on taxation of multifamily and commercial property and all that. But that's a great thing to look at. No doubt.
But also with COVID in office space and what is 2030, 2040 going to look like when it comes to office space? So if anything, all of these things theoretically should be a lower percentage 20 years from now. But again, I don't know if you've done the proportionality math. And Lynn, I will direct the question back to you. I don't know if you have a percentage kind of answer right now.
Yeah, like I said, we have not done a comparison of what is the land use today versus this. We've started doing the absorption data to try to get an understanding of what in theory should we be having for office or for commercial and how does that play in? Obviously, you're lumping it into the purple. You're trying to give it that flexibility so when office is high, they have a place to go at the same time the retail. Because the other thing we don't know is what is going to happen with retail. If it becomes more entertainment based, does that mean we need more or less? Is it we need it more in one synergy? What does all that mean? And anybody who has the crystal ball, I'm more than willing to take it off your hands for you.
Yeah.
So-
Well, we have great retail developers. So if anybody's going to give you good insight, it's who we have in our community. I think the other thing we can't lose sight of, the goose that lays a golden egg, are these data centers. I mean, we're the envy of the state when it comes from property tax mix. It used to be about 55-45 commercial. Now with the changes, it's still 50-50. People would love 50-50. But I mean, those things are going to pay a fortune someday, and that's going to give the city a lot more flexibility on some of these other issues that most cities don't have. But anyway, that's for.
Well, and I love that you gave, there could be a block with a mix of things too. Like right now, I mean, how many duplexes do we have in West Des Moines? Like barely any?
Yeah,
I mean, it's.
not many.
But now you could actually have a block where you have duplexes, quadplex, single family, row houses. I mean, there's an appetite, I think, for that. But I think you guys have done a phenomenal job on this. I really do. I think we need to understand better as we hone in a little bit more and look at the land and what it was and what it is now. But you guys
I
did a
think
great
the other
job.
thing to keep in mind, these sensitive areas, and I fully support that, tree preservation, whatever it might be, we have to look at giving developers more densities. Because a developer has to buy that property and you can't do anything with it. So that's why people are mitigating wetlands and doing everything, because financially you can't make a profit developing unless you go fence row to fence row. So I think as we're doing this, I think we need to recognize that if we are telling a developer, look, when you buy that, you're going to dedicate that sensitive area to greenbelt or whatever, but we're going to give you more densities, or we're going to cooperate on some of the infrastructure. Otherwise, no one's going to develop those areas because you can't make the math
doesn't
work.
Yeah.
Can't make any
Yep, agreed.
And right now, in our understanding, you can transfer that density within your development, but you can't pick it up and move it. And that's part of it, and that's a state thing that we'd have to deal with. But you can tell, we debated, do we take the hatched areas and make them all green? Because really, that's what we'd like to see happen to them, but that takes away that value. How do I shift that density off of there?
But at the same
So everything
time,
is
the more we try to battle Mother Nature, the more we lose.
Right.
Well, and like I said, those
mean-
are amenities. Developers will rather use those, but historically you can't based on what we just discussed. So as long as we understand that, and I think we agree that sometimes more density is better than everything being spread out, I think there's a way to find a win-win there. And I think the developers are the first ones to say, great, this is an awesome solution. Manage the stormwater regionally. I'm happy to protect these sensitive areas. Give me a little bit more density and help me a little bit on some of the infrastructure costs, and we're all good.
Well, if there's something we're really good at balancing, and that's why we're done so well.
And also,
Renee,
at the
sorry.
end of the day, I think this whole notion of making sure that we are an affordable city, really, we have to wrestle with us really moving the needle. I know we do, on this being a city where folks can live and afford to live, and there's opportunity that excels at. This, at the end of the day, cities have to be affordable. Things are changing. And the way in which the incomes and people working these retails and doing all these things, we just got to make sure at the end of the day that affordability of where our city is going isn't shrinking, it's enlarged, it's bigger.
To me, to that point, you find areas to say, okay, in this area, you don't have to have a basement. If you want to put a house on a slab, I mean, that saves a ton of money. So to me, you can come up with areas where you can change. I mean, we got a nice list from Hubble about, okay, I can build more affordable housing if you let me use this product type and this. Okay, but let's let people know that this is going to be the area where that's going to happen.
Yeah, just like, and that this is the first time I drove around it. I went to the Dairy Queen on Grand.
Yep.
And behind Dairy Queen, I decided to drive by there
Those
for the
mobile
first
homes.
time.
Yeah.
Right.
And it wasn't like it was a
Manufactured
mobile, it was
homes,
beautiful. I drove around. They have all these decorations. I think You know that area back
Yeah,
there?
19th
Been there since I was,
19th
it's
Street.
been there since I was a little kid. It's been there forever.
Yeah.
It is so well kept.
Yeah.
Yep.
It is so well maintained. It was just, everybody has a different personality of their home.
Yep.
I think that's affordable
This,
living, right?
this takes that into account because it allows for those smaller lots, right? I mean, that's a big deal. I was going to ask you, would this potentially allow for tiny home? I mean, there have been developers that have talked to me about doing tiny homes in West Des Moines.
Quite honestly, we don't prohibit them today.
Right.
I mean, there's building
But
codes
they
that you have
can't
to have a certain
afford-
amount of square
yeah.
footage and you have to
You
have a
look at the
certain number of
land costs,
rooms.
the
but
infrastructure
we
costs,
don't do
nobody
it
can
today.
build those
Can't
and
afford
make
it.
the math work.
Yeah.
Okay, well, this is all,
So I'm going to jump over, the scenarios are all through this PowerPoint. If you didn't run through them, I encourage you to, because it really does start saying how people can pick and figure out where they need to go based on what we're kind of pulling together here. So we're not going to run through all of these. I think they pretty well paint the picture pretty easy for you.
They did. Thank you for the scenarios, by the way. They were really good to read over and get head wrapped around. So thank you for creating those.
So if you had looked at the PowerPoint, we'd already be on to that one. But so what we still need to discuss, like I said, any of the questions coming out of this, we're hearing that you want to do kind of a comparison to really kind of understand how these colors are changing. Confirming that the environmental aspects that we have to date, is there other ones that you want to see mapped that you think should be included? Should we be looking for endangered species in plants and animals? Do we want to map that? Like I said, the archaeological is just a little bit harder to do. Soils kind of really, unless we're looking to preserve ag ground, soils really aren't a big help to us in that sense, that I think it'd be merit to map them. We need to have the discussion on the number of the roads, which ones. It's not to say that we're not going to have a network of roads. It's just which show up on this map, which are put into the transportation plan. How do we paint that picture, though, again, for assurance of what somebody might be next to? So kind of once we kind of keep refining this map, like I said, we know we're going to go back out for public open houses. We know we're going to have stakeholder meetings. We know we're going to have more outreach to come from this. That assurances and mitigation, that's one that we'll have to figure out. Is that a workshop with you to start understanding from our eyes what it means when I say, okay, a yellow meets next to light purple. What can I do between them? How much assurance do you guys want built in? That's one of those things that we're going to have a little bit discussion. It really probably needs to be a workshop so we can have that kind of back and forth on it.
that's fine.
So
Do you want to
we'll
have it in
create-
2 weeks?
I'll be in Minnesota, but if you guys want to go right ahead.
Well, you
Well,
can-
you wouldn't want us to have it without you here. I can.
I fully trust Karen and Linda, so
You can
I'm
use
good.
Teams. You could be heading for the mountains and you can use Teams and be
No.
right there.
I don't think you want me making any decisions after.
Yeah,
the-
that's up to you guys. You guys can drive the schedule, so you tell us when you want to have it.
I like what you said though, Steve, that, she goes out, they go out and they talk to the stakeholders and all that kind of stuff. And then maybe we have a big workshop. Everybody gears down for it and.
I just want to make sure
We
that,
don't want to go out to the stakeholders till we have some of these ideas
Oh,
kind of
okay,
known
workshop
where we're
first.
headed for.
Okay.
Yes, we have to have that workshop before we can start going back
well,
out.
why don't you guys come up with a date that the workshop works for you guys and then give us the agenda again?
Okay.
And we can
We're gonna
go,
probably need to order.
At this point, I'm going to go ahead and say August 17th. We're
Okay.
going to shoot to have this secondary
Okay.
workshop to kind of discuss these
We'll
transitions.
probably be here all night.
And
That works.
anything that you have questions on beforehand, what we'll try to do is this color comparison. Whether we do that at the very beginning of that workshop or some way that. we'll
that's
look
fine. And
into.
can we all agree that the land use drives the street classification? There's no way a street should say what the land use should be. I mean, that is just backwards. Once we agree on what the land uses are, that's going to dictate what the streets need to be based on the land use.
Yeah, I agree more than I disagree, but it's that when you have a 4 or 5, 6, 8 lane road, that
Right.
dictates the land uses.
Yeah, you can't have single
But
family.
we got areas where we have no roads.
Right.
But you have to decide.
But I still have to have this network. So we've got to figure out,
Right.
okay, what's the backbone network that we absolutely want?
Well, and I like your idea of just putting on streets that are over 4 lanes.
So maybe that's where we
Yeah.
start and we see.
Yeah,
what that
because that's
looks
kind of
like.
what we did the last time. Remember Linda Roble and all those? We couldn't
Yes.
put on, I mean, you can't put on 26-foot streets. We just said the major corridors. So if you look at roads that are greater than 4 lanes,
Okay, that's where we'll start.
Let's
we
start
will put
there
those
and
on the
see what
map
we've
and see
got.
what that looks
Yeah.
like.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that, and then maybe there needs to also be an asterisk on there that says, I'm sure there is already,
Well-
that basically says that these roads is not the exact location of these, because people will come in here and they will say, I've got a road
But again,
going straight
without
through.
property boundaries,
Yeah.
it's harder for them to say you were on my property or you're not on my property. So not having these property boundaries on there will help us quite a bit just on
Okay.
that note.
And we
I
just
just-
kind of identified corridors is what we identified. I mean, there's a little give and
Yeah.
take in there, but we
Yeah, I
just
just-
identified
some.
corridors. In this corridor, we're gonna need a 6-lane road.
I just want to make sure they know it's in
Right.
this court. It's not, this is not, because some people look at this as the word of the Lord. It's like, my house, because I know where my house is.
And I
It's
would
right
too,
there.
because there's property lines on there. But, so like I said, Eric's done a really good job at taking a look at topography, taking a look at features, and really trying to figure out where these roads can go. So I think what we have moving forward will be a lot closer.
Okay, well, let's
It
just.
still may
yeah,
shift
Right.
100 feet, 200 feet, one way or the other when you start getting into the true environmental studies, but it
Right.
gets a pretty good picture.
I'm
I
just
think it's
going
gonna be
based on
interesting to
last time.
see where it's gonna be interesting to see when you have roads bigger than that, actually, how many we have on there. I mean, we paid like $1 million to do this study from Grand Prairie Parkway down, across the river and over to Norwalk. I mean, to these major thoroughfares.
Mhm.
So some of that work has already been done.
Yeah, I think we have a pretty good idea, and Brian can correct me if you're wrong, but I think we have a pretty good idea where the real major network needs to be. And that one really is about moving cars.
Right.
So those, the land uses adjacent to those are going to be things that are more tolerant to cars.
Yep.
I don't
Okay.
expect to have the quiet neighborhood
Right.
necessarily
And,
kind of
and
thing.
I hate to bring this up while we're discussing it, but, you know, we've
Hey,
got some
don't.
sensitive, we got some sensitive bridges, as you know, that need to be somewhere. I mean, we took them off the map last time. Do we leave the bridges off going over
On
the road?
35th and 50th?
Yeah, I mean, and I'm not suggesting that those are the areas that we need to have those, but we know that there has to be crossings over that river
No,
in
I get it.
some location, right? And
Yeah, some of us have scars over
I'm
the,
just sick that day that you guys discussed it. That's all I know.
so are we. We're not showing up.
yeah.
But I mean, there has to be, we got to start getting some roads over that river.
You know, and actually, with the exception of one family, we accomplished a lot on that last time.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Then you mentioned having what the mayor was talking about, the difference between the old, difference between the new, right? Maybe having that by the beginning of the meeting. We have that a little bit before, because if the first time we're seeing those differences is at the beginning of the workshop, I worry that that might take up a good portion of the workshop. But if we're having it a little bit beforehand, not like 2 weeks beforehand, because that's 2 weeks from now, but if we do have it a little bit beforehand, we could kind of see some things ahead of time, do some homework.
And maybe I'll throw this out, is maybe what we need to do is have really 2 workshops. One where we just kind of vet the colors on the map, the roads that are on the map. We kind of look at more of that and narrow in on that. And then the secondary one comes back with these assurances that we're going to have to
Yeah.
build in. Because really these assurances get built in more into the place type, pattern and use tables and zoning than they really do in the land use. But we have to have that good understanding of them. So when we go out to talk to people, they say, well, wait a minute, what's next to me? That we understand where we're headed.
And
with
you're
that.
saying that some of that's going to be defined by what it butts up against, that it's like, all right, here's orange butting up against yellow, you know, for the first 150 feet, you can be this, and then after that, it can be this and this.
Yeah, that's what we can do. I mean, that's one of the approaches. But
So
when
you-
I'm in the middle of an orange, doesn't matter. If I buy into orange knowing I can have a mix of anything next to me, do I really have an argument to say, that's another discussion we need to have, is once you're internal to a color, how much protection from your neighbor do you need?
so we'd have that first workshop on August 17th and the second one on the first Monday of September.
Which might be later. It's gonna be Tuesday then, right?
It's a Tuesday,
Oh.
the Tuesday, if that's the case.
You
Yeah.
guys tell me if
If
we
that
can
works for you
plan on
guys, that's
that,
fine.
that's what we will plan
Yeah.
on, this as the
Yep.
target dates.
Yep.
Like I said, I mean, this is so important. We need to get it right. And I'd rather have more workshops that we can manage versus an all-day session. Everybody's eyes glaze over.
Completely agree.
Bite this elephant one
Yeah.
bite at a time,
Well,
eat it
you-
one bite at a time.
When you said it too, I mean, we really need to know as policymakers, the rationale, the reasoning behind all of this stuff, because when we're going to have somebody potentially arguing with us that, give me a break. This thing is purple. It could very easily be orange too. You could have orange here and then you could put, it's going to be, we don't totally understand that rationale. It's going to be hard to argue with somebody that's understands their land and what it was zoned before and what it's zoned now. And
yeah, we firmly believe we'll have a lot fewer people arguing because they have gained land uses, but there'll be some that are going to lose out and I shouldn't say lose out because residential is what's developing right now. We've seen it. Right. Offices flipping to single family because that's what people want and that's what's selling. Coming out of COVID, probably even more so than not, because are we going to be building a lot more office buildings or what's going to happen to that whole mindset? So we will do a comparison. We're going to have to kind of figure out what's the best way to do that because of not having property lines. Right. But I could probably drop the property lines on long enough to do the comparison, then we'll pull them back off.
And I don't think we've had a lot of people go out and speculate and buy land at the top of the market. That's happened in some communities. But it hasn't happened here that I can think of, which is going to be helpful because you don't have someone say, well, wait a minute, I just paid $10 a square foot for this and you're going to change it to single family residential. You can't do that. I don't think we've had that happen.
The ones that have been coming to the pre-apps, they're more about changing it over to single family than we are seeing change me up to something higher.
Yeah.
I've noticed that. Kind of going the opposite way for.
Yeah. And it's because they don't have the high costs into it to start with, and they're just looking for what the market wants. I'd rather sell it today as single family residential than wait for 15 years for office. So that's why it's been working so well here.
Yeah. So one of the benefits of if we can really build in this flexibility, hopefully when the competition for your ground, there's a slide in here and I'm not sure if you noticed it. This one here. This is a comparison. This was a scenario where I wanted to build a 15 dwelling unit per acre apartment building. Today's map on the left, it's only in the black areas that you can go. So about 2,100 acres you could go look at and say, is that where I can build my apartment building? Under the scenario or the approach that we're trying to take now, that'll put it to about 8,300 acres. So my competition for, I've got to sell my ground, I'm now in competition with that other 8,300 or 8,200 acres. Hopefully we'll start pushing those land prices down because the competition for what they want is all over the place.
Yeah, I'm not the only convenience store selling milk anymore.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
which is going to help the affordability.
Yep.
Yeah, no doubt.
So like I said, if we can get all this to come together in the right steps, we think we can get there. We're pretty confident we can get there. We can get it explained and get everybody on board. We can get there. Now, I'll put the other caveat out there. Modeling becomes much more difficult when you have flexibility.
Yeah.
That is something we're still working through with water and engineering on sewer and water of trying to figure out, okay, can we design for the average? And if a development comes in that's above the average, it should be pretty obvious that nexus is on that development. But how do we land on what that average is, especially in the dark purple where I really have unlimited density, I have unlimited building size. How do we get to that? And that's what we're still trying to work through is what's the best way. We've gone out and found real life examples of each of these areas, and we're kind of breaking them apart and trying to get to that modeling to understand what is those densities, what is those square footages, and trying to back into it that way. So there's still some work to be done, assuming we can get past that, because there's been mixed use development built all across the country. Somehow or another, they must be modeling for it. We just got to figure out how to do that and how do we apply it here? Because obviously our densities are not, what they are in some of the.
Well, we need some help from Brian and people, because if I got an open trench and I can put in a 64-inch sewer versus a 48, and the only difference is the material cost, why don't I put a 64 in to give us more flexibility? We need to understand if that makes sense in some of these areas to oversize some of these. We don't want to waste money, but it's a whole lot cheaper to do it that way and build in the flexibility than have to come back and put a second pipe in.
Yeah, and I'm not so sure, Brian, when it tells there's flow issues, there definitely is with water that you don't want to oversize it and different things. And so.
And water, there's issues of having to bring it off constantly if it stagnates.
Stagnates and stuff.
Well, and sometimes,
finding that right,
sometimes what you can literally accomplish reasonably is going to dictate the land use to say, look, this is the only thing we can get done here. We're sorry, but this, based on the topography and the demands, this is as good as we're going to get. So let's plan accordingly. But where we can build in flexibility, we should.
Yeah.
And that's in that infrastructure.
Okay, so we will come back August 17th. We'll worry about the map. We'll look at the roads, what we want to do with which roads are going to go on there. We'll look at the land uses and how these colors compare from today to what we're proposing. We'll model kind of the existing part of the town so that maybe that's the part we start in to understand how those colors are coming together. We can bring together a list of, like I said, example spots. Maybe that's what we'll do is get you the place types, get you this list of here's where some of these areas are. So in your mind, you can kind of start thinking about that.
To Greg's point, can that information be provided in the council packet on Friday so that we can have over the weekend to at least start looking at it so we're not seeing it first thing here?
We can certainly get you, I can certainly get you the maps, the illustrations. It's how to explain it, or do I have to explain, or I just got to get you the maps? Because that's the struggle here is you're trying to wrap all these thoughts.
Write all that, yeah.
I think you're better off just giving us what you can give us. We're going to look at it and we'll come with questions and maybe you explain it and our questions go away, but it's better than seeing it for the first time here.
I think what I will try to do actually, Karen might kill me on this one, but is what we'll maybe try to do is get the packet out to you a week early. So at that council meeting on the 3rd, maybe we can even get a lot of this done. The council meeting on the 3rd, we can have those questions kind of back to us. So here's the things we need to understand from this. There might be a way for us to maybe get it to you even farther ahead. I say that as I'm being the one to go on vacation, so it's really easy for me to say that.
Yeah, no,
So
I mean,
we'll
that's helpful. I mean, Tim gets us the budget thing a week ahead of time, and I think that streamlines that Saturday meeting because we've had enough time to digest it.
We'll look to see what we can pull together of what you're
Okay.
looking for and how quickly we can kind of get that to you. And then, like I said, it's how much do I have to write for an explanation that
Well,
gets
if
to
you
be the
can't,
difficulties.
maybe we're trying to jam this in so fast. I mean, if you can't get it done in that first, meeting in August or whatever, or second meeting in August, maybe we push it back.
Yeah, let us see what we can get.
But again, on the map, if you said this was office for 20 years and now it's single family residential, we don't need the whole chapter on why. Now we know that area is something we need to understand. So, I mean, I think that's kind of the happy medium we're looking for. I just want to understand where those major changes are, then explain it to us. But I want to have some idea of where they are.
Yeah.
I think some of the problem though is going to be with flexibility. This used to be this, now it's, part of it is still this, but part of it is this and this, right? I mean, as you're having the flexibility, before you had all these different categories.
But I think we're just asking for the major changes. We're going to sort those details out as you go out in the community, then come back to us, and it may not be an issue.
Yeah.
I think we're looking for more of the wholesale, wow, this was residential and now it's commercial, or it's retailer and now it's single family.
Yeah, the concern I have is the areas that have been sitting office has probably not had that infrastructure to them. So it's almost like, it's not really fair to say it hasn't developed and it should change as much as it hasn't developed because there was no infrastructure there. What's certainly no markets, and that's where that absorption rates start coming back into play, and a lot of the other pieces start coming back into play. So we will look to see what we can pull together for the reasons why the colors are changing as best we can. There's going to be areas, and quite honestly, a lot of the purple is I could paint it 4 or 5 different colors and they all would work. So who am I to decide it should be?
Something that's a drastic change is what you want to see.
Yeah, because you're going to ferret out all the other stuff when you go back out and talk to the landowners and the developers. And then we're going to hear the input. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
All good.
Really good.
Okay, thank you.
Really, really appreciate it.
All right, we're adjourned.